Hi everyone, and welcome to the 35th episode of Slime Time Sidequest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is Yangus the Legendary Bandit.
And this is Pendy, subbing in for Platy M3. Hadouken! Sonic, boom! Spinning bird kick!
Whoa. What on earth are you doing over there, Pendy?
No, I'm just working on some new moves I'm going to use for self-defense. Shoryuken!
What? Self-defense? All right, well, look, those are Street Fighter moves. I mean, those aren't real. They're not going to work for you in real life.
Oh, yeah? Well, watch this.
Okay. All right. Now you're just making stuff up. All right. This might have been a bad idea.
No, that was real. I may have pulled a few muscles there. Oh, this isn't good. No. Oh.
Well, he stopped moving for a bit. While Pendy attempts to pull himself together. Shush! Quiet down there. Quiet. Okay. Well, now that he's stopped grunting, I'll give you a breakdown of our episode today. We're going to be talking about fighting games. Yes, from arcade hits to niche novelties. We'll be looking at several generations of fighting games.
Amazing! But we may need some tag team help for tonight, and for that, we have invited our good friends of the show, Bururian.
Hey, how's it going?
And Twinkie.
Yo.
To chat about some of their favorite fighting games as well. Before we get into the games, let's start with what got us into fighting games in the first place. Bururian, let's start with your fighting game origin story.
For me, that would probably be, sometime in the late 90s. I kind of wandered into a Funko Land, which is a predecessor of what you now know as GameStop.
I remember those. They were
Yeah. They were everywhere around here, and I kind of wandered in one day and saw sitting on the shelf in the Super Nintendo section a copy of a game called Samurai Showdown, and it was only $6 back when used games didn't cost you an arm and a leg. So I picked that bad boy up, went home, and I think for the next month solid, that was about the only game that I wanted to pick up and play. Like, I was hooked, and basically since then, I've been a big fan of fighting games.
Very nice. How about you, Twinkie? Let's go to you next. What is your fighting game origin story?
Oh, it's really long. When I was young, I was one of those kids that was really into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers at the time. And my parents got me a Sega Genesis. They also got me a copy of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which to my recollection, I believe it's the only Sega Genesis Power Rangers game, but it's a 1v1 fighter, and it's probably the very first fighting game that I actually got fairly invested into. Like Kid Neck, my neighbor kid, like we would just come over and we'd play all the time and all that. But I haven't really been into fighters that much until I think it was around middle school. We ended up having a roller rink that was that opened up for business, and me and my friend, we shortly discovered that they actually had a small arcade there. And in the arcade, they had what I consider as one of the greatest gaming arcade cabinets of all time, and that's Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yes.
And we were like, we go to this roller rink, and the roller rink was set up is that the arcade was kind of set to the side in the big stadium part of where the rink is at. So we would have to pay for a ticket, but we'd just go straight to the machines and play MVC2 like for 4 or 5 hours. And that's what really got me interested in fighting games in general. But shortly after, unfortunately, the place didn't stay up for long. I think it was like a couple years, and they went out of business. So I really didn't play much fighting games after that. Of course, there was the PS2 version, and I think there was a Dreamcast version of the game out there.
Yep.
And we did play those a bit, but, in my opinion, when it comes to fighting games, there's nothing better than playing the real cabinet, So after that, I kind of fell off. But when Street Fighter 4 came out, it's kind of what brought fighting games back on the map, because they were kind of like dormant for a while. And I picked up Street Fighter 4 for PC. I picked it up and played it for a little bit. I wasn't really huge into it, but, a couple years later, and I believe Super Street Fighter 4 was out at this time, I went to a LAN party. And at this LAN party, they recently remodeled, and they had a PC room and a console room. And in the console room, there was these people walking in, and they walk into the console room, and I wouldn't see them for the rest of the night. And we're there from like 4 p.m. until 8 a.m. It was like an all-nighter thing.
Nice.
And we're the all high and mighty PC gamers. We're sitting there playing 5 to 10-year-old RTS games in World of Warcraft and whatnot. And me and my friend were sitting there playing, and I was sitting there having my Twinkie break after an intense match, and I heard all this noise and hype coming from the console room, and me and my friend decided to go check it out. Well, we walk in there, and they had all these couches, and everyone in there was playing Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I believe MVC 3 just came out like literally the week before. And so all these people were playing MVC3, and as it turns out, these people that were going to this LAN party, they were actually like members of the local fighting game community, and we ended up going in there, we talked to them, we ended up playing matches, they taught us a bunch of stuff, even stuff I didn't even know about at the time, and we were there spamming out matches on Street Fighter 4, MVC3, and I think Soul Calibur 4 was the current game at the time. I could be wrong. But we played those, and we played like every single game we could get our hands on until like 8 o'clock in the morning. We were playing for 8 hours straight, essentially. And after that is kind of the point where I really got into fighting games, because the community was so nice and welcoming, and they taught me so many things, and that's kind of what started my love for fighting games, essentially.
That's awesome.
So.
Now all I have stuck in my head is go Twinkie Rangers, Twinkie Rangers.
That's a pretty great origin story. I like getting into a community like that. I wish I had a story like that. No, for me it was mostly all solo.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't think like LAN parties are really much of a thing, because this happened probably towards the end of when LAN parties were even a thing. You know, not many people were going to them anymore. You know, so. But I was very fortunate enough to encounter the fighting game community here and made a lot of friends and just got into it from there. So.
Awesome. What about you, Yangus?
Yes. So for my case, I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to fighting games as a little kid. Like, my first experience with them was with a Smash Brothers 64, mainly just because I saw, with characters like Mario and Link and, Pikachu and stuff together. And for a while, that was pretty much my only exposure to playing them. I knew about like stuff like Street Fighter and some SNK stuff like King of Fighters, and mainly characters from SNK like Terry Bogard. But it wasn't really until what was that? Like 2009, when Nintendo Power had this article covering this upcoming fighting game from Capcom called Tatsunoko versus Capcom that caught my eye. At first, I kind of was just like, okay, whatever. It's an anime-focused game like some of these other ones that I've seen come out. But then I actually started watching some gameplay of it on YouTube, and it was actually funny enough, because I had mistaken one of the upcoming characters that they had announced as like a brand new addition to the cast as something else. And funny enough, it's actually one of the properties you guys are going to be talking about tonight, Gundam. I thought that one of the new characters they were adding, Techman Blade, was a Gundam character, and I'm like, oh, I recognize, Gundams. I didn't really remember the name of the show or what happened in the show that well at the time, but when I looked it up, it's like, oh, that's not a Gundam character, never mind. But then when I started watching the actual gameplay, I'm like, oh my god, this game looks amazing. It looks so fun and fast and really exciting. Eventually got the game when it came out in early 2010 here in America on the Nintendo Wii. And pretty much from that, I've been a big fighting game fan ever since. Like most major releases that have come out, I've bought them. I've bought indie ones, checked out a lot of older releases too, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Of course, still a big fan of Smash Brothers and some 3D fighters too, like Tekken and Soul Calibur. But I've always had a lot of love for team-focused kind of tag team games, probably just, getting my start with Tatsunoko versus Capcom with it's tag team gameplay and stuff. And I usually watch stuff like Evo and all that sort of thing. I'm not like a great player by any means, but I always enjoy getting a new fighting game and trying to figure things out, or just messing around with it with friends or like on the CPU and stuff. I don't really do a whole lot of online gameplay, to be honest, because I just I know I get frustrated at it. It's just like, oh, I know how to do it. But then there's also people that they're kind of condescending about it. It's like, oh, you can't do that, just it's part of the territory. But it's at the same time, it's just like, yeah, it's probably not good mental wise for me. So I don't play online unless it's with friends.
Nope. Yeah, I'm the same way.
So I've played quite a few different fighting games over the years, and some I've definitely liked more than others. I do admit have a soft spot for some older fighters as well too. Like a lot of them that I've played, like whether it was in high school or in college, that were like some older ones versus some of the newer ones. I definitely found myself clicking with those a lot more. But I think that's just more so just a personal thing, because I'm like that with a lot of other stuff too. But Yeah, I think that about covers my story. I'm going to publish it into a book and hopefully make a movie deal out of it. But what about you, Pendy? What's your origin story?
So it was around maybe second or third grade when I was a little kid. I was part of this bowling league, and we were at this bowling alley. We do it every Sunday, play our games. And then afterwards, there was this little arcade that the bowling alley had, and in the arcade was Street Fighter II Championship Edition. And for whatever reason, that really caught my attention, and I started playing the game. I had no idea what I was doing, just a little kid. This would have been back in the 80s. Or no, in the 90s, would have been early 90s. And I had fun with it. But like I said, I had no idea what to do with the moves. So what I ended up doing was I ended up really liking M. Bison because I could just cheese it with him. My repertoire of moves was basically slide kick, the Psycho Crusher where you hold back 2 seconds and then go forward with one of the punch buttons. And then if they blocked it, then I would try and throw them real quick. That was it. That was my moveset, was those three things. Slide kick, go across the screen and try and throw them. And that was it. But I got the timing down and it served me well. And I was just a little kid, no idea. And my dad thought it was hilarious because sometimes he would see me play when he would come to pick me up. And he would see me play these older kids. These kids were like twice my age, twice my height. And they were playing with like Ryu and Ken and actually knew the moves and knew what they were doing. But I had the timing down so well that I was kicking their butt. So he thought that was hilarious that I was able to do that, cheesing it with M. Bison. So that's how I got into fighting games. I later got into the Street Fighter games. Most of the games that I like are Capcom fighting games, and I really got into Soul Calibur as well. Those were fun. I never really got into Mortal Kombat or into Tekken. That just wasn't really my thing. Basically just the versus games I really like a lot. That's going to be one of the things I'll be talking about tonight. And then the other game I'm going to be talking about is not a Capcom game, but it's basically a Street Fighter ripoff. So, I mean, it's in the same realm of that type of game. So that's how I got into all that stuff.
It's funny, too, you talk about, like, you just kind of figured out the timing and stuff when you were a kid with, like, M. Bison and Street Fighter 2, because a similar story I have to that was when I was, I was in high school, like, sophomore, junior year, if I remember right. And we were at one of my buddy's house playing Soul Calibur 4. Because one of my friends had bought a copy and brought it over. It was he just wanted to play it with us for a while. And I had never played. I like at that point I had very little experience. I don't think I actually had played like a 3D fighter like that where you can move around like kind of up and down too, as well as going just left and right. But what was it? From my other experience with other fighting games, I just kind of was learning as I was going. And eventually my friend who did own that copy of the game was like, he wasn't very happy that I was picking up things pretty quickly and was starting to win more. I remember he ended up whipping out his special talent that he had made in the character customization that would heal herself every time she hit you with attacks. And it's like, okay, so we're going to do this sort of thing, huh? It's just like, okay, yeah, if you're going to be like that when we're just playing for fun, I'm not going to, it was just funny. Looking back on it, it's just funny. At the time, it was like, oh, this is, annoying. Like, why is he getting mad at me for figuring out how to play the game?
I like Soul Calibur because you could to a certain extent, you could button mash and you could still pull off a lot of moves. So that made it fun for me. You didn't have to be like super into it to pull off a lot of stuff.
Maybe that's why he was mad I was figuring out stuff. I don't know, but I've never asked him about that. But I just think back on that all the time, and it just makes me laugh because it's like I'm just a kid who's trying to learn this game as we're playing, and I'm pulling off this stuff whether I'm meaning to or not. He's just getting like, motherfucker.
How dare you?
How dare you play as Astaroth and win? But yeah, anyway, so yeah, there are all our origin stories. You'll be able to read those in the console release when the game comes out, being our biopics. You can't really see it in the arcade versions when you click us on the character select screen, But yeah, that dumb joke aside, why don't we go ahead and get started with talking about our game? I think for tonight, how about we go in reverse order? So we'll start with you, Twinkie. We'll go to Bururian, then Pendy. Do our first games and our second games. You guys good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, sure.
All right, Twinkie, you are up first.
Well,
what's your first game?
Mugen. So, as I mentioned before, at least for me, I love fighting games. I love playing them. But for me, the big part of it is always the community. And what community and sub-community I can think of is Mugen. Basically, what Mugen is, it's less of a game and more of a game engine, but it allows you to, get characters that other creators made. So, sometimes they, rip them straight from, MVC2 or something, but sometimes other creators kind of create their own character. And you can kind of get all these assets and stages, You can kind of combine them into making your own build or version of the game, and I absolutely love it. The game's been around. Mugen's been around since 1999. It was originally developed for MS-DOS. It did switch over to Linux in 2001, and I believe in 2003 is when it started getting Windows. And after that, it's kind of received updates here and there. And it's received updates, but unfortunately, I think the last major update was back in 2013, so it hasn't been updated in a while. But there's there's still a sizable community with it. They're still constantly building characters, stages. There's other communities that are kind of like actually making their own games with it. And I don't want to disrespect to the developers who are actually making their own games with it, but I think a big part of Mugen is just finding whatever characters and stages you can find and just throwing them up in the wall and see what sticks, and just having an absolute blast with it. Me and my friends, we used to have this thing where we call it terrible fighting game nights, where we would just find the worst fighting games we could find, like Shaq Fu and whatnot. And part of the tradition was to get Mugen, and we just throw all the broken characters we could find together and just sit there and just have a blast, just toying around with all these different characters that would just one-hit kills and all this stuff. But I personally think Mugen is still, the community still isn't like as big as it used to be, but it's still around, it's still active, and if it's something that it interests anyone, I strongly suggest looking into it. It is a ton of fun.
I love how so many people over the years have built all these Dragon Quest characters that you can use in Mugen. Like I've seen like builds of Zoma and Blue Slime, all the different heroes and stuff like that. That's always been fun to see. I haven't really played any of it, but I've seen a lot of videos based off some of those Dragon Quest characters that people have built.
Yeah, there's like a handful. I know there's quite a few Elena characters out there. I think last I checked, there was like 4 or 5 of them. There's a couple Dragon Lords. There's a couple Zomas. There's a lot of people developing a lot of characters too. So there's going to be duplicates, and each character is only, they're kind of their own thing. But yeah,
and then you get like Homer Simpson and like Peter Griffin from Family Guy and all sorts of goofy characters. Great moveset.
Hey, don't forget Barney the dinosaur. That's the best. Like I remember years ago, I found a YouTube video where it was for Mugen, and what was it? It was a video of Homer versus Peter Griffin. Like at the time, I'm like, there's a fighting game with these two. Then I learned about Mugen then. But then I found a clip where it was Barney the dinosaur versus like all of these like the bosses from like these different fighting games and stuff. Like Onslaught from Marvel vs. Capcom 1, like Akuma from his appearance in the original or one of the versions of Street Fighter 2. I can't remember which one it is that he first appeared in, but it was like his first time showing up. He's super overpowered when you fight him. Just like it was just really funny watching it, because when I learned then that it was this program that people use to make characters and do all this crazy stuff with it. It's like that's actually really funny and really cool that people have just like thrown all these different characters and properties and stuff together just because. Hey, wouldn't this be fun?
I love it. One of my favorite characters to come out of it is Ronald McDonald.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
And Dark Ronald McDonald, the antithesis. No, speaking of Mugen, have you guys ever heard of Salty Bet?
Oh, don't give me. I was actually on Salty Bet while I was writing up the stuff for this earlier today. No joke.
So funny.
Why don't you enlighten us on what Salty Bet is?
So Salty Bet is basically a specialized version of the game that's live streamed. And what you do is that you get fake currency and you make bets on which character is going to win. And I forgot how often it is, but every so often they will start getting a tournament going, and each character is kind of like in their own tiers, like C, B, A, depending on how strong they are. And I believe the absolute most broken characters are considered X tier. And so once in a while you'll have like a X tier tournament where you have these characters that will absolutely crash and break the game, and it's just so much fun just throwing fake money at it and just having fun with it. It's definitely worth checking out. It is really fun watching it.
Literally, just go to saltybet.com.
Yep, absolutely fun.
That's nice. That sounds like a really fun community where you can experiment with a lot of different fighting systems from the various franchises and characters, and make up your own characters. I always thought that was really cool that existed out there, and it seemed to thrive pretty well. But so Bururian, what's your first choice?
So my first choice is going to be the game I talked about getting myself into fighting games, which was Samurai Showdown on the Super Nintendo specifically, because this game was an arcade game originally, but it's been ported to, I think, just about every system under the sun at this point. It started on arcade, but it's been on, the 3DO, it's been on the Game Boy, it's been on the Game Gear, it's been on, several Neo Geo systems, the PlayStation. I think it's even gotten re-released in some of the new collections that they've been doing as they've been trying to bring back Samurai Showdown. But basically, gosh, what is there to say about it? It's an SNK fighter first and foremost, and those were like the bee's knees back in the day. Like, this game has kind of a weird story. It like takes place in 18th century, or in the 18th century, and you kind of like choose characters from all around the world, just like Street Fighter 2. What year was it released in? I think it was released in 1993, and around the time that this game came out, a lot of fighting games were set in kind of modern times and focused on more hand-to-hand combat like you would see in Street Fighter. This was one of the first, I believe, weapons-based fighting games out there, similar to Samurai Showdown and all that kind of stuff, which is what really drew me into it. I really liked that. Every character had a unique weapon that they could use. And what was a lot of fun about it was that it was a very fast-paced fighting game, to where, SNK games like King of Fighters focus on building combos and stuff like that. This game was all about doing your quick and fast hits. And it had this really cool feature on when the heavier the blow, the more slowdown there was to kind of emphasize how hard you were being hit. And it had very elaborate backgrounds, ranging from, Japan to South America to the made-up island of Onigari, I believe is what it was called. But it just had this kind of litany of interesting characters from Hohamaru, which is the kind of poster child for the series as a whole. He's basically the Terry Bogard of Samurai Showdown. He's always like the front and center character. And then I think they also had one of the biggest characters at the time, who was aptly named Earthquake, who was this giant guy from USA, and his weapon was a wrecking ball on a chain.
Oh yeah, he had a scythe on the one end too, so he could just throw that at you.
Yeah. In some of the later games, he shows up with another character, like a little tiny Freddy Krueger looking guy that kind of does some alternate hits for him.
Are you talking about Chang from King of Fighters? Because he has the ball and chain, and he has Choi that helps him out as the little Freddy Krueger guy.
I might just be thinking of two different characters.
Yeah. You are right though about Earthquake being from the U.S. though, because he is like I think he was like one of the biggest playable like character sprites back in the day. I think he still is considered one of the biggest ones too.
Definitely at the time, but as later Samurai Showdown games came out, I think they made bigger and bigger characters just because they could.
Oh yeah, there's a demon that shows up in, I think it's in Samurai Showdown 5, if I remember right, and I think he's pretty big too, from what I remember.
Is it the one with like the bone, like the sharp bone arm?
Yes.
Yeah. I forget what his name is.
Yeah, he's pretty gruesome though. Like he will, if you win with him and use some of his super moves, he'll actually eat the opponent, especially if they're at low HP and he defeats them. Like they'll just be eaten, and then they just magically reappear if there's another round after that.
There you go. But an interesting thing about this game is that while it was made by SNK, it was programmed by Capcom and SNK employees, so it was kind of a little joint venture, which I don't think a lot of people know. Another fun thing about it is it had this kind of little, in the home console version at least, the arcade version definitely allowed this, but there was this thing to where if your strikes met under right conditions, you would do this thing to where you would fight back and forth to see who would like knock the other person back, and you would get this thing of, wiggle your D-pad left and right real fast and you'll knock the other player off, to where the developer, one of the producers of the game, later said, in the console version, that actually doesn't do anything. It's just chosen at random.
Oh.
So there's no chance that you will definitely win. It's a flip of the coin, basically.
I remember they would do that kind of thing in the Dragon Ball Budokai games, where you have to do a thing, lock guns, and have to press buttons, and whoever could do it the best would win that little showdown.
So the two guys that I played as the most were Ukyo and Hanzo, who were both Japanese fighters. I also like that you could play as the boss in kind of a secret way if you input a special secret code and stuff like that. But
SNK's pretty good about that too, where in some of their fighters, especially the arcade releases, if you knew like special codes, you could play as boss characters then. Like I know Garo Mark of the Wolves, which is part of the Fatal Fury series, that has a few codes you can use to play as the two endgame bosses, Grant and Kane. So it's cool that Samurai Showdown had the same thing too. I didn't know about that actually.
Oh yeah, it also had this really cool feature of it would zoom as you fought the battle. Like if you would do these heavier attacks or jump high in the air, there was this zoom function that would happen in the arcade version and some of the home console ports. But on some of them, notably the Super Nintendo one, I remember especially had that problem to where they just took it out, so it stayed zoomed out, so character sprites looked smaller than other versions of it, which gave you more screen space to work with, but it made the characters look tiny. But yeah, that's Samurai Showdown. It was a commercial success. It's got half a dozen games at this point, if not more.
I remember playing the original in a Pizza Hut, and I remember being awful at it.
It's not an easy game to pick up and play by any means.
It is hard.
Unfortunately,
it is a hard series. Like I've played. I actually have one of the collections you were talking about, Bururian. I bought it on my Switch, where it has like Samurai Showdown 1 through 5 and the special edition of 5 with it, which is like the updated re-release or whatever. But I've played the different games over the years, and it is a harder fighter to get into because it is a slower fighting game too, because you have to really kind of read your opponent's moves, and if you get like those heavy slashes, you're going to do a ton of damage. But it's not like Street Fighter or something or not like Street Fighter. It's not like actually like you said, like with SNKs like King of Fighters, where there's some combos that you can do if you know the right button combos. It's not really a combo heavy game. It's more like
it is not.
You get like maybe a 2 or 3 hit combo, but it's more about trying to catch your opponent off guard.
Yeah, you wanna slam them with those heavy hits. That's what you want to do. That's the point of the game, is to get in and get a few quick taps in, but you wanna try to lay them down hard and heavy.
Yeah, so you can drop your weapon in this game. I'm watching a video of it.
Yeah, you can. That's really cool. And you can drop your weapons both at the same time too, because that's happened to me a ton. You smack your opponent in the air when they're trying to do a down air attack on you, and both of your weapons will just go flying across the stage, and you have to run over and like press down to pick it up.
Yeah, it's fun too, because if there are certain times where you can knock your opponent's weapon out of their hands, and it's just like okay, get them, like get them now before they can retaliate.
Pin them into a corner. That way, none of their attacks do any damage because they don't have their weapon. Because that's the whole crux of it, is it's a weapon fighter, and I thought that was the coolest thing at the time. It also got me into Soul Calibur because I just loved the concept of weapon fighting.
Yeah. I'm not the best when it comes to playing this game, but I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be more fun with multiple people.
Oh, absolutely.
Or with more people, more than just one player, because from my experiences of playing arcade modes only for the most part, the CPU is like really smart in these games. Like it's like scary smart. It's super brutal. And
a lot of those arcade games they do input reading, so they know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, like other SNK games are just as bad too, but man, even when you put this game on like these games on the easiest difficulty, they can still like just beat the shit out of you.
oh yeah, the Super Nintendo version, even on easy mode, like the first 2 rounds give you a run for your money.
Yeah, this is definitely one I would more so recommend playing with friends if you can, because you'll have a much better time. But even though I'm not the best at it and I have my frustrations with it, I do really like a lot of the character designs and kind of the flow of the game too, because there's some really cool characters that are in this series, and ones that like even to this day that have appeared in other SNK properties. Like actually just a few years ago when KOF 14 came out, it actually was one of the first times where a Samurai Showdown character appeared in the series via Nakamura, or what's her name? Nakamura. Oh gosh, what is that girl's name?
Is it the hot girl? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Nakaruru if I remember correctly. Apologies if I have.
Yeah.
Apologies if I have that.
I definitely don't have the full character roster memorized.
Oh, the hot girl. I've seen her. I remember her.
Yeah. She's probably one of the more popular characters.
Oh yeah. But there's characters like her, and then you have, of course, characters like Earthquake, and some of these other folks that have been in there. Like, one of my favorite characters has always been oh goodness, I'm terrible with the names from this series, but it was this gal that was introduced, and I believe he was from the first one. He is this kabuki style dancer, a fighting character.
He's got like a big yellow thing. I was just watching him on a video. I know who you're talking about.
Oh gosh, he's got like the big like naginata spear. He has like the painted face.
Are you talking about Tam Tam?
No, I'm not talking about the tribal warrior guy.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy where he always is like hopping on one foot when he's walking around. Like it's like
it's either it's Kayoshiro?
Might be him. Let me double check here.
It's either, because I'm watching him fight in the video right now. I think it's Kayoshiro.
Oh yeah, that's him.
Yeah, Kabuki is definitely an apt description of what he looks like.
Yep, it's Kayoshiro. He's always been one of my favorite characters because, for one, I just kind of like how he has such a unique look to him, and that they brought in that. I think it's Kabuki style. I think that's what.
I think
that's supposed.
That's absolutely Kabuki.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just have always liked his style and just how, he's kind of like a goofy character too compared to some of the other ones, because, a lot of the characters, they make him portray him as being a little more on the serious side. And, there's a few that are kind of silly too, but I like with him that, it's supposed to like represent, it's a very classic image of Japan that some people might have with kabuki dancing and, with the unique face painting and that kind of style for him. But I love it that when you play as him, then, especially in from footage I've seen of the recent entry in the series, that's also just called Samurai Showdown, where his voice actor must have just been told, just have fun with your lines, because he has some great ones, especially when he uses like his little projectile attacks. He goes like, Oceany! Like, I love it when they let the voice actors just have fun when they do like move calls, because
oh yeah, it's a good time.
That's what helped make them memorable. But is there anything else you had about Samurai Showdown Bururian?
No, that's basically it. It's a very simple fighting game. It definitely gets expanded on in further games, but I just wanted to talk about where it started because it was my introduction to fighting games.
All right. Well, Mr. Pendy, I think that means you're up next. What's your first game?
Gotcha. So my first game is a Frankenstein's monster of Street Fighter mechanics and big-ass robots. So it is Gundam Battle Assault 2 for the PlayStation 1. It was released in North America in July of 2002, and then in Japan in October of 2002, with a PAL release the next month. The game was actually developed by Natsume, and it was specifically designed for North American audiences and was produced to help hype up Mobile Fighter G Gundam that was about to air on TV during the Toonami block on Cartoon Network. So that's no surprise, as each of the major G Gundam characters and their mobile suits are featured among the game. Personally, I kind of dislike G Gundam, never really got into that anime, but I do love the mobile suit designs that came out of it. The diverse skill sets that come out of each one of the mechs are a lot of fun to play with. And it's not just limited to G Gundam either. There are characters that are mobile suits from Gundam Wing and various other Universal Century Timeline Gundam series. So there's a total of 30 mobile suits in all that you can unlock and choose from. And what's great is that you can also unlock the ridiculous boss characters that they have in the game as well. So like, for instance, you've got this Big Zam, which is this humongous bipedal mobile suit monstrosity that takes up almost like half the screen. Or you can go in the other direction and have fun with mechs like the RB-79 Ball. And that's just a simple ball-shaped machine with two little arms and a small cannon mounted on top. The variety of units you can play is fantastic. I love it. So the game has 5 different modes. It's got Versus, Time Attack, Survival, and Street. Street mode is just their way of saying story mode. In this mode, you are limited to 8 characters, which I would call hero characters, that you can run through, and it's going to be based off what Gundam franchise they are from is what story you're going to get. It even features the voice acting from the dub actors from their respective Gundam series at the time, so that was cool. So if you were big into Gundam Wing, like, those voice actors from the show that were airing on Cartoon Network did the game as well, which is pretty cool. So when it comes to fighting, the setup is a basic 2D side-scrolling Street Fighter-like style, with a few quirks thrown in to make it stand out as a Gundam fighter. If you're used to Street Fighter with quarter circles, half circles, and Shoryuken type motions, then you're all set for this game. Certain moves a unit can do will require ammo. Once you're out of ammo, you can't use the move anymore. Almost every unit has a mega special attack that you can use 3 times in the match. All units have like this 3-block long boost gauge. You can use this for a few different functions. You can do a regular boost that will send you catapulting into the air in the direction you choose. You can do a quick dodge to the side. You can put up a beam barrier, or you can even take to the air and just kind of fly around as you want, as the gauge slowly depletes itself. Now, if you get close to your opponent, you can do a quick grab and it'll stun them, or you can do a follow-up attack, which is nice. And HP is determined by armor bars. So you'll get at least 3 bars of armor health. Once a bar is depleted, you'll go down in an overheating state where you'll fall down and be stunned for a brief second. You can also dash back or forwards with a quick double tap on the stick or doing the directional buttons. Now, you do have to be careful of certain beam sort of attacks that some characters have because they are unblockable, which is interesting. And all of this sounds like a lot, but it's really super simple. If you love Gundam and simple Street Fighter motions for controls, you'll love this game and its vast variety of characters to use. Now, on a side note, there are actually 5 games in this series. The first one was actually Japan only, and the last one that transitioned to more of a full 3D setup was North America only. So I thought that was cool. And fun fact, the initial release of Gundam Battle Assault 2, the Gundam, spelled Gundam, was spelled Gundum on the spine of the CD case in a printing error. It was later corrected with further printings. My copy must have been an earlier release, as I have this spelling error on my game, right on the spine, the Gundam.
That's how you know you're a true fan.
So anyone else ever play this game?
I did not know this game existed, but if I had, I would have played the heck out of it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I was really getting into Gundam at the time, thanks to Wing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was right at the end of Wing airing on Cartoon Network, and right before they started doing all the G Gundam stuff.
Never played this one myself, but like I said earlier, Gundam is always one of those things that's always stuck with me, though, even though I don't really know that much about it, just from seeing what I have on TV. But sorry, Twinkie, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was saying I have played it, but I can't tell you anything about it because I don't remember anything about the game. It's been so long. But
yeah, it's super. Like I said, it's super simple controls. It's basically just like half circle and a button, or a quarter circle and a button, and that does like most of everybody's stuff. But it's got like I said before, it's got like the voice acting from the different dub actors. So like for example, there's that famous scene in Gundam Wing where Hiroyui is talking to the princess or whatever, I can't remember her name, but he's like, "I'll kill you," and it's like a famous scene from that game, and he says that line like right after he does one of his mega supers. He's like, "I'll kill you," and then unleashes his double barrel shotgun, laser beam shotgun at people. But yeah, that's all I got for Battle Assault 2. What do you got, Yangus?
All right. Well, for mine, I am going to be talking about one of the games that I mentioned in my little intro there at the beginning of the episode, and the game that to this day is still one of my favorite fighting games and one of my favorite games, what I would put in probably my top 10 favorite games list, and that is Tatsunoko versus Capcom. First things first, what the heck is Tatsunoko? Well, I'll be glad to tell you, even though if you may not have asked. Tatsunoko Productions is a animation company that's been in Japan for, I believe, the 1960s is when it was first founded, maybe late 1950s. They've been around in Japan for decades, and pretty much comparison-wise, they would be like the Hanna-Barbera of Japan, where they have a lot of famous characters that a lot of different generations over there would recognize, like Science Ninja Gatchaman, Speed Racer, or Mach Racer, or Mach Go Go Go, as he's called over there. I don't remember what the original Japanese name for this series is, but over here in the States, another one that's really was well known was Samurai Pizza Cats, which was another one of their properties. If you happen to watch Toonami in like the early to mid 2000s, they had properties like Chorus and Cash On Toonami / late night Adult Swim. But they've been around for a very long time. Typically, they do like kids and young adult animations, a lot of like superhero stuff, younger kid animation stuff. You know, they have quite a wide variety of a vast library, let me say. Anyway, so how this game came about, Tatsunoko versus Capcom, was thanks to Tatsunoko Productions asking Capcom to make a game featuring their characters. The team at Capcom at the time, were trying to come up with an idea, and eventually they kind of settled on a fighting game, and then they thought, hey, what if we did a crossover fighting game with Tatsunoko characters. Thus we ended up with the next entry in the Capcom Versus series, which hadn't seen an entry for several years. I believe at that point the last one that had come out from the Capcom Versus series was Capcom Versus SNK 2, which was back in the early 2000s, like 2000, 2001, somewhere around there. So it was a pretty big deal. And this was the first time that there was going to be a 3D Versus game in the series. There were 3 versions of this game. First was the arcade original, released in like late 2007, early 2008. There was the Japanese re-release in late 2008 called The Cross Generation of Heroes, or with the subtitle Cross Generations of Heroes, excuse me. And to everyone's surprise, Capcom announced at E3 2009 that the game was going to be coming overseas with the new subtitle Ultimate All-Stars. This was a game that a lot of people did not think was going to see a release outside of Japan, because with all of the copyright issues for the Tatsunoko characters that Capcom's going to have to go through, a lot of fighting game fans expected that this game was going to stay Japan only for just for its entire life. To everyone's surprise, Capcom, went through the hoops and was able to get the character licenses. They were able to work things out and created the international version for all of us on the in the West to enjoy. Tatsunoko vs. Capcom features the game features characters from different decades of Tatsunoko's animation works and from different console generations on Capcom's side. Thus, we have the original subtitle of Cross Generation of Heroes. The cast for both sides includes a lot of characters that tend to be a little more action focused. On the Tatsunoko side, there are more superhero / action star type characters, while on the Capcom side, there were more focused on the different console generations / trying to represent different entries in a series, or in some cases just with its own title with one character per entry, just depending on the situation. On the Tatsunoko side, we had Ken the Eagle, June the Swan, and Joe the Condor from Science Ninja Gatchaman, Cashern and his dog assistant Frender from Neo Reuter Cashern, Tekkaman from Tekkaman the Space Knight, Polymar from Hurricane Polymar, Yatterman number 1, Yatterman number 2, and Duranjo, along with Boyaki and Tanzura from Yatterman, Ipatsuman from Time Bokan Ipatsuman, Tekkaman Blade from the show of the same name, Tekkaman Blade, or as it was called over here, Technoman Blade, Cars from the show of the same name, and Gold Lighton from Gold Lighton, the Golden Warrior, the giant character for the Tatsunoko side. Unfortunately, due to the licensing issues, we did end up losing a character. This character was Hakushin Daimao from the Genie family, which was one of the representatives from Tatsunoko who was kind of to show the more child-focused / younger audience side of their library, because he was a lot more cartoony in design than the other heroes, because a lot of them, more action heroes or like superhero type characters. On the Capcom side, we had Ryu, Chun-Li, and Alex from Street Fighter 1, 2, and 3, respectively, just to represent the different generations of Street Fighter. You had Morgan from Darkstalkers, Batsu from Rival Schools, Kaijin Nosoki from Onimusha, Mega Man Volnut, Roll, and Zero from Mega Man Legends, the original series, and the X series, respectively.
I got to stop you for a second. I'm watching a video of this, and it features Roll. Does she use a broom?
She does.
Fight? Oh my god. Okay.
Yep. And unlike Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Roll is not the worst character in the game anymore. Hooray! She's no longer regulated a roll tier. She's actually very good. Wow.
With a sweeping her enemies, I guess.
Oh yeah, she uses cleaning to its full power. But anyway, we have Saki from, and I probably do not have this name correct, but this is what I remember off the top of my head. Quiz Nanori no Dreams, which was pretty much a dating sim arcade game in the 90s, so definitely an out of left field pick from Capcom. We had Beautiful Joe from the Beautiful Joe series, Frank West from Dead Rising, and PTX-40A, one of the models of robots you could use from Lost Planet. He was the giant character for the Capcom side. So you had a pretty good variety of playable characters to select from. In most Western players' cases, they weren't really familiar with a lot of the Tatsunoko characters, but everyone is pretty easy to learn and pick up. There's a great way you can play with the game, turning on the special moves so you can see them on the top of the screen or on the bottom of the screen while you're playing, so you can figure things out. But moving on from that, this fighting game is a tag team fighter. Your buttons include your light, medium, and heavy attacks and your partner attack button. You can perform crossover combos, aerial raid attacks where one character is swapped and for the other, you have your crossover, what do they call them? Variable combinations, where it's like you can either like swap back and forth between one character's special move and another character's special move to continue a combo, or you can use both at once for a lot of damage. You have guard assaults, where your partner character is swapped into counter while you are blocking an attack, or while your partner or while your rival is blocking you. Try and catch your opponents off guard, and a lot of different means to get around combat. Unfortunately, with this game, you cannot choose your partner character's assist attack like you could in some older Capcom versus games, but for the most part, everybody had assists that were pretty easy to work with. A few were a little more harder than others. Like, I know one of the harder ones is Joe the Condors, because his was his gunshot that travels up in an arc, which is good for anti-air, but as far as comboing, it can be a little trickier depending on what character you play. But let's see. So as I mentioned just a little bit ago for the characters, this game is so far the only versus game that features giant characters. Each side had its own giant, Gold Lyton from Tatsunoko and PDX-40A for Capcom. They can't have a partner character, but they have much larger health pools than the other characters and have permanent super armor in most situations. Their combos are harder to pull off on characters, especially since, a lot of the smaller characters can get around them a little easier. But if they can start getting their damage in, they can really hurt. And if they're fighting one of the other giant characters, whether it's, a mirror match or the other opponent, they will be able to do combos like normal. And it's pretty fun when you do one of the combos as Gold Lyton against like another Lyton player, or against PDX-48. I should note, though, that both of the giant characters are considered on the lower tier side, especially Gold Lyton, who even with all the balance changes and stuff was still considered a low tier in Ultimate All-Stars. But his battle cries and his voice acting are top tier. He is like the triple S plus rank character of this game just for his battle cries alone, especially when he wins a match and he yells out "Gold Lyton" at the top of his lungs. Like, again, you could just tell his voice actor was just having a heyday with what he was doing and just going all out over the top. I absolutely love it. And Gold Lyton, he'll always have a special place in my heart, even if he's not the best character in the game. But moving on from that, the biggest gameplay inclusions in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom are the Baroque system, where you sacrifice some red life to extend your combos and essentially reset your character position, and the Mega Crash system, where you sacrifice 2 super bars to get opponents off of you to a full screen distance. I personally really love the Mega Crash system in this game, and I'm really surprised that more fighting games, especially these like tag team crossover styled fighters, don't implement this more, especially for combo heavy ones like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 or Dragon Ball Fighters, where they don't have this Mega Crash system to try and get your opponents off, because there is a meta around it where it's like, well, do you use it to try and get your opponent off? Your opponent try and bait you to use it, so then you end up wasting meters and make yourself free. It's a very interesting metaphor, and like that's what I've always enjoyed about that as well. And really, it's just nice too, because if you're playing against somebody who's really pressuring you and you realize they're not going to let up, you can use the Mega Crash as like the get off me button at the cost of 2 of your super meter bars. But all of the gameplay explanation stuff aside, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, it does hold a really special place in my heart and in my gaming library, because as I said in the opening, this is one of the fighting games that really got me into fighting games. Like, at that point, I had no experience with stuff like Street Fighter or the other Capcom versus games. So this was a fighting game where I had to learn how to play, a proper fighter and figure out how combos worked, how to, chain your your special moves and your super moves into it. And this was probably one of the best games to figure that out with, because with this game only having, a 3-button focus for like your light, mediums, and heavies, and your partner button, it was easy enough to figure out that, for most characters, you can do like standing light into crouching light to medium, sustaining medium to crouching medium for a lot of, just kind of figure out the basics. Then you can move on to a little more complicated stuff. So it was really great to learn that and sort of get my feet wet with fighting games in general. This is also one of the fighting games where I actually went out and bought the special arcade stick for. Capcom had teamed up with Mad Catz to make a Tatsunoko vs. Capcom themed fighting arcade stick. It's the only one that I own, and I still have it sitting on my shelf, and with the original box too. And let me tell you, that was $90 well worth, or like it was like $90, $100 well spent on that. I think from all the years that I've had this game, I've put like 500 hours into it, just messing around with it. Back in the day, I played a ton of online with the Capcom Unity group that this game had on Capcom's official like fan forum website. Shout out to any of you guys if you happen to know this podcast and listen to it. if you remember me with the name Hakushin Daimao, that is me. That is Yangus. That is I. But this is a game that I have been I was part of the community for a very long time. It was super cool to see that even to this day, it's still played a lot in side tournaments at big events. There's people that have also figured out a way to help keep online play going for it, even though the Wii online servers have shut down. People have workarounds for it and everything. But it's cool that for this game being sort of the game that never had a chance, that it did end up coming out over here, and it ended up becoming one of the the best games that I've played in my life, and it is just because I do have nostalgia for it, probably, but it's a very well-made fighting game, too. Like, it's probably one of the better balanced fighters I've seen as well. Like, there's definitely some broken shit, like Zero, who is just ridiculously good as a playable character, especially with this combo game and everything. But gosh, I could really just gush about this game, like, just if I didn't stop myself, because there's so many things I've learned from playing it over the years, from messing around with it, from watching tournaments, and not just with the game itself, but like the characters as well. Because like when I originally first was finding out about this game, and actually you might like this comment, Bururian, one of the things that caught my eye about this one and made me interested in the first place was that Mega Man Volnut was in it, and it's like, hey, I know that character. I played that Mega Man game on the N64 back in the day that he was from.
Oh, man, you played the rough version of it then.
I did. But not that I was very good at it anyway, but he was one of those characters that I instantly recognized. And it's like, hey, I know that. That's a Mega Man that I recognize.
I was excited that it was Volnut and not like regular classic Mega Man or even Mega Man X, because up until that point he had never. No, I can't say that. He was never included in a game that had been released over here, I guess you could say. But he was in Namco Cross Capcom for the PS2 in Japan, but it was really cool to be able to play as him in a fighting game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what I've loved about it too is that when it was getting the international release, they had to unfortunately cut Hakushin Daimao, but they were like, we're going to add 3 more Tatsunoko characters. We're going to add 2 Capcom characters. The 2 Capcom characters were Frank West and Zero, who were big fan favorites from Capcom players. And with the licensing stuff, there was only so much they could do for characters. But it's been very interesting learning all the behind the scenes stuff over the years for this game from being a part of that community, because it was really cool, because back in the day, on the Capcom Unity boards, we learned a lot of behind the scenes stuff for why certain characters had issues. Like, I know we learned that like Hakushin Daimao, why he was cut was that apparently his copyright holders in Europe, I think it was in Italy if I remember correctly.
Italy specifically, because in Italy way back in the 90s, they got the rights and aired the show out there. So when it came, the reason why they cut it basically is because the game has worldwide online, and because the online was global. It wasn't like Japan had their servers and America had their servers. It was all together. And because they couldn't get the okay from the Italian rights holders at the time, they had to completely remove the character from the re-release of the game, because I think the initial release of the game had Hakushin Daimao in it.
No, he was cut entirely. He was.
Oh, he wasn't cut entirely?
Yeah, when Capcom were at E3 that year in 2009, when they had the playable teasers and stuff for it, like all of the characters were present from the previous build of the game, which was Cross Generations of Heroes for the Nintendo Wii. But there was a very noticeable absent spot on the roster where, at the end of it, where Ipatsu's Man was, because where he was at on the old character select screen, Hakushin Daimao was on the slot like right above him. Well, that slot was mysteriously empty. So yeah, he was completely removed. He was not in any international release whatsoever. It wasn't
that's what I mean, is he was in the original, like...
Yeah, he's in the Japan only release.
Yeah.
Then when they came to Ultimate All-Stars, he got the boot entirely.
Right.
Which is a real shame, because and it was cool that the people at the Capcom Unity stuff were telling us, kind of this behind the scenes info as well. But just to make a long story short, then, since I don't want to keep rambling on and on, I have a lot of love for Tatsunoko versus Capcom. It's one that I've played to death, and probably if this game ever gets a re-release, which I highly doubt it will, I will play the shit out of it all over again and like mess with it, play it online, do everything all over again, because I love this game to death. I have like a big wall scroll poster for it. I have the little trading cards that Capcom did.
Oh wow!
I have a lot of memorabilia stuff from this game. Like it is one that, even though I could gush and gush about it, it is one that I think it is a very well made fighting game, especially for it being like their very first attempt 3D versus fighter, and with especially with a lot of characters that like people outside of Japan are not going to be as attached to, versus like the Marvel characters like from Marvel versus Capcom.
Dude, when they announced it over here, and it was like, I mean, I was familiar with Tatsunoko because I've always been in the kind of anime game. In fact, I was excited because I was like, whoa, Ipatsu Man is going to be on it. I love Ipatsu Man so much. He's like a baseball-themed superhero with a mech.
Oh, yeah, he's great. There's so many good characters in this game too from both sides. It's got such a fun roster of characters.
I always loved it. I loved it too because I heard the theme song of his before I saw the character. So I hear in the background, Ipatsuman, and I was just like, no way. And of course, he was in it. It was very interesting to see that Capcom of all people did a crossover game with Tatsunoko, like especially outside of Japan, to where basically everybody knows more or less nothing about 90% of the properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that was my case for it. And that's why originally I like kind of glanced over it until Tekman Blade was announced, where I mistook him as a Gundam character. Started watching gameplay, and I'm like, oh, this looks really fun. And actually, before the game even came out here in America, I remember doing a ton of research on like the different characters and stuff from Tatsunoko that were going to be in the game, and like watching the theme songs on like YouTube and reading articles and stuff. So by the time the game came out, I was at least a little more familiar with all of the characters. Aside from actually playing as them, but being at least understanding why it was cool that some of these characters were brought into the game in the first place.
Yeah, the one that everybody was probably going to be familiar with the most was what do they call it over here? Battle of the Planets, I think.
Oh, are you talking about like the Science Ninja Gatchaman?
Yeah.
They had like some different names too.
Yeah, G-Force. Yeah. I watched Gatchaman as a kid growing up because they called it G-Force back when I watched it, and that was one of the ones I was familiar with. And I remember having a little bit of a crush on the pink girl.
Had a crush on June, huh?
Yeah, but it would be that. It would probably be Kashern as well, because Kashern has made like several minor like releases over here over the years, but it's never gotten super popular. And then maybe the Yatterman, but then everybody else like Ipatsu Man, Doranjo, Polymar, especially Karis. Nobody, like none of that stuff ever left Japan.
Yeah, Karis was like, when researching all that, apparently like stuff like Karis and one of the reboot series for Kashern, they did air on TV over here. I think it was Toonami if I remember right, but it was like later night broadcasting, so probably when most people were like, asleep. Because I have found English, like official English dubs of Karis over the years.
I think even when like G-Force like aired over here, it was like one of those shows where like Sailor Moon, where they'd throw it at like 5 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah, because I have seen from, again, just going back to like my Capcom Unity days, where a number of people like in like Mexico and like South American countries, a lot of them were actually pretty familiar with some of these Tatsunoko properties. So, it could have just been like a regional thing too, like maybe in North America. They just didn't have them as prominently as some stuff of theirs, like Speed Racer, because a lot of people recognize that one. Even people that didn't like necessarily watch the show, they know about Speed Racer.
Yeah, I mean, there's anime that have like not gone to North America, but have gone to like France or Mexico or something like that, and got like super huge, and then we never like heard of it until like decades later. Like even with Dragon Quest, you've got Dai that's like super big in other countries, but never saw the light of day in North America.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's what I have to say about Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. It's a really fun fighter. If you're looking to pick up some games for your Nintendo Wii, if you're feeling kind of nostalgic, try and see if you can find a copy of this game. It is a lot of fun. And it's interesting, too, because it actually, like, on different websites that I've seen where they talk about, like, some of the best Nintendo Wii games, this one is always one that does seem to end up towards the tops of the list. That like on IGN and, like, in Nintendo Power's own like countdown list for like the best Wii games before the system ended. Like they put Tatsunoko, I think, in like the top 5, and it's like, wow, that's pretty good, especially for a Nintendo focused magazine where you'd normally see like Zelda or Mario taking up some of the top spots.
That's nice. Sadly, I've never played this game. Like it took me a very long time before I eventually got a Wii. It got into it really late, and I just never got around to trying this game or getting it. But it looks fun.
Oh yeah.
It is. It very is.
Yeah, it's. Have you played this one, Twinkie?
Yeah. My experience is pretty limited. I never owned it, but honestly, the big appeal for me when I found out about this game was actually PTX 408, because I am a huge Lost Planet fan. When that came out on the Xbox 360, I no-lifed Lost Planet nonstop until like the online scene died. So when I found out about this game, a friend of mine picked it up and we played it, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my time with it. In fact, I would even go to say it's as one of the most underappreciated fighting games out there. Definitely,
I agree.
for sure.
I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, this game, unfortunately, like a few months after it came out, Capcom were like, "Oh, hey, by the way, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is going to be coming," and all attention got shifted over to that game instead from everybody. Capcom, I feel like that was, I get it, they got to promote what they have to promote, but it was like, oh, you sent this game out to die, then what are you doing?
Well, hey, I mean, at least we got it, I mean, like you were saying,
it's like a lot of support too.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, like everyone thought like, there's no way this is coming over, but at least they made a release of it, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I said, there are still a lot of side tournaments for it, like Evo and Combo Breaker, CEO, stuff like that. So, I mean, there's still very much a fan base for it, which is super awesome. And I'm glad to see that there are people that are helping keep this game alive. But yeah, I'll wrap things up now for that one because we got some more games to talk about. So, Twinkie, we're going to jump back to you. What's your second game you want to talk about?
Might be feeling a little guilty about this one. Got to channel the Platy M3 a little bit.
I guess we better gear up, huh?
Oh.
So, yep, it would be Guilty Gear Xrd or Xrd, however you want to pronounce it. I'm still not 100% sure on how it's pronounced, even after playing it for years. But so my history with the Xrd is, or Guilty Gear in general, is that, as I mentioned before, I didn't get really huge into fighting games until MVC3 and Street Fighter 4. And I wasn't really huge into anime or anime aesthetic or anime style games. But I did play BlazBlue here and there with the guys, and it was fun. But I ended up finding Xrd on sale, and I picked it up, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Just for the absurdity that is Guilty Gear. For those who don't know, Guilty Gear was released on the PlayStation 1 in 1998, the original, and has received several mainline games since. There is only one mainline game that isn't a fighting game, that's Guilty Gear 2 Overture, which is a action real-time strategy game. And the latest game, and I gotta make sure I say this right, is Strive, not Stride. Guilty Gear Strive was just released last year in 2021 and is currently on its Season 2 of DLC, if I am correct on that. But as I said,
it just wrapped up Season 1, so yeah, it's on Season 2 now.
Yep, but as I said, I wasn't really huge into anime at the time, and Guilty Gear Xrd was kind of what got me into it. After playing it religiously for a while, I ended up going out and finding every single copy of the older games, including BlazBlue, as I could find, and that just brought me down to the rabbit hole of anime fighters, which I primarily play now. I don't really play much of Street Fighter or anything like that. The only other fighting game I probably play now is Tekken 7. But one really cool mechanic that I thought, and it's kind of a core, I don't think it's in Strive, but one core mechanic I really think is really cool is the instant kill moves. So for those who don't know, if you do a certain input in Guilty Gear, you put yourself in a mode that replaces your tension gauge, and depending on how full that tension gauge is, it'll start going down. And if it goes down, you'll start taking health. However, when you're in this mode, you can do a move that instantly kills your opponent. The downside is if you whiff and miss your attack, you cannot use tension anymore. So all those moves that are built around the tension gauge, they're gone. So you're gimped out of it.
Oh no.
And I thought that was like one of the coolest things ever. Of course, for competitive play, no one uses it because it's really easy to get out of it if you see it coming. So no one does it for competitive play, but as a casual player who was getting into it, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And watching the awesome animations, and I still think Guilty Gear, at least when it comes to fighting games in general, has the best animations in any fighting game ever. Not like no contest.
Oh yeah, Guilty Gear has always been a beautiful looking game.
Oh, definitely. But I also think with the stylish mode too, because I had some friends who were also new to fighting games, and stylish mode was actually a pretty cool thing to do to allow players to get into it and at least put them, as a handicap up to the actual technical players. And I just think it's like an overall pretty good game to help bridge the gap between competitive and casual players. But yeah, I have a lot of love for Guilty Gear Xrd, so much so. And I owe a lot of my love to anime in general, actually, to Guilty Gear as well. Don't ask me anything about the lore though, because I know next to nothing about it. It is absolutely insane if you look at the lore. ArcSys games are just out there with lore. Because when Yangus approached me, he was like, "Hey, Twinkie, you play fighting games. You want to do a sidecast?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm interested in it." So I decided to go and almost immediately start researching the lore, and I was completely lost in it. I just ended up giving up on talking anything about it because, as I said, I mostly play fighting games for the fights themselves and the community around them. I don't know nothing about the lore on it, but that's another rabbit hole. So.
Oh yeah, it can be. Some of these fighting games are just absolutely ridiculous.
Oh yeah, Arc System games. I don't know what the writers are doing there, but man, they just go like all out for like, let's just make this story as batsh crazy as we possibly can. And they do, because like, oh my, like if you think this game gets crazy, you should look at the lore for and the backstory stuff for Blaze Blue, because oh my god, that like has time travel, that has alternate timelines that somehow affect the actual one. These are games where it's like, just play them for the game, don't play for the story. You'll get confused.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if that was the same people that did that one too.
Yeah. ArcSys is responsible for both Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue.
Ah, okay.
Both are really good franchises.
Oh yeah.
But they're pretty complicated fighters for the most part.
Yeah, they're very technical.
Yeah, they are. I will say though that especially with Xrd and Strive, that. And also, they do it in Blaze Blue as well, but ArcSys is pretty good about having in very extensive training modes to help teach people, how to play and how to approach different types of situations. So the nice thing is, even if you're brand new to one of these games or you're new to fighters, that you do have a nice place to go to learn how to play these games and to sort of figure things out, especially to figure out like, I'm low on health, my opponent's really putting down a lot of smackdown, what's something I should look out for, or what are some good combinations that I can use with this particular character. Like what was it? I know when I picked up Xrd, it was the Rev 2 release, which featured Biken and Answer as two new characters that they added, and learning and using that to learn how to play as some of these Guilty Gear characters who I had never played as, such as Sin, Raven, and Answer, who's one of the new ones. It was a really great learning tool, because it takes the time to really explain, like, okay, well, here's how, this special move is affected if you use some meter. Here's how this one's used if you use this particular button. These are some good ways to combo this move. So it does a really nice job teaching you how to approach these characters and different mechanics and stuff. It is intimidating, though. I will not deny that. But at least I will give ArcSys credit for trying to make it as approachable as possible by this really extensive training mode. So big kudos to them for that.
Yeah, their tutorials are actually pretty good. Definitely, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, the real question, though, is who do you main when you play Guilty Gear? That's a very important question to ask anyone who plays.
I am a huge fan of chargers, so if there's a charger in the game, you can spot on, you can tell who I main. But it's not Mei. I like Mei. I like playing her, but I'm more of a Leo White Fang guy.
There you go.
All day, every day. The only exception to that rule, going a little off topic here, is BlazBlue, and that's Iron Tiger. And I can talk about this guy all day because I still am convinced he is the best fighting game character ever made. He is just so fun. But with the exception of him, I'm a huge fan of chargers. And Leo isn't really necessarily as much of a charger as Mei, but he's still, got some charge moves in his moveset. So. And the way he can put his swords behind him and change his moveset with that too. He's just a really fun character to play.
Oh yeah.
Funny enough, as much as I like weapon fighting, when I play Guilty Gear, I always play as Jam.
You play as her. Bururian, I'm sorry.
It's either Jam or Biken.
I'm sorry, I can't be your friend anymore, Bururian, if you play as Jam.
You don't like Jam?
I hate Jam. I hate her so much. She's like the most annoying character in Guilty Gear. She's so annoying.
Is she annoying because she beats you constantly?
No, it's because her voice acting.
It's no gold Litan, huh?
Like honestly, it's one of those cases where just like everything about the character just annoys me. It's I don't have any other explanation than that. It's just everything about this character. Like even when I first played a Guilty Gear game with a Double X accent core on the Wii, and like as soon as I fought her for my first match against her, I'm like, I don't like this character. It was like a pretty instantaneous, I don't like you. But
I see how it is.
Oh yeah, well that's all right. Like with my Guilty Gear mains, they're on like complete opposites of their play style approaches. So one of them is Potemkin, the grappler / giant of the
big
series.
Big boy Potemkin.
I just want to say before you go on that I just listened to her voice actress, and very squeaky, so I see where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for just for a quick little side note here, for some reason in an Xrd they changed it so her speech pattern is more like she's an Asian woman who's learned English. And those old like stereotypes where it's like they might skip certain words in their speech when they talk to you. It's like
a lot of articles and stuff.
Yeah, it's like if you said like, oh, what a nice day it is, they'd be like, oh, what a nice day it is, stuff like that. They for some reason changed her speech pattern to that. It's like, what? She didn't talk like that before. What happened? But anyway,
but she's a talented chef.
Well, knowing Guilty Gear lore, it's probably built into the lore.
Probably. Some sort of time collapse happened. Her voice changed and her speech pattern. Who knows? But
went to college in America. Went to culinary school in America.
Yep. But yeah, other character-wise, and the character that pretty much got me wanting to play it as well was the good old Dr. Faust, the tall man of the game, where he's like 8 feet tall.
Faust and his paper bag head.
Oh yeah, I love playing as Faust so much. I loved it too how with Strive that they changed him to be this creepy doctor, and after looking up the reason why, it's like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense then why he had such a drastic change of character. I won't say in the event that somebody here does care about learning the story themselves, but it was definitely one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, that explained why he had such a drastic overhaul with his appearance and with his moveset, but especially why it took such a darker turn.
Yeah. And I think Happy Chaos kind of replaced him more as kind of like the wacky character too, right?
I think so, because he definitely seems pretty out there too with the way he acts. Like I actually just recently I saw a clip where it was a Happy Chaos, like a mirror match. The two of them high five when the match starts. The one's like, well, which one of us is the clone? Yeah, it beats me. I don't really remember anymore. And then the fight starts.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's the best way to approach a mirror match.
Yeah.
But, gosh, yeah, like I got my start with Guilty Gear with Double X, like I said, on the Nintendo Wii, and I played quite a bit of Xrd. I definitely prefer Double X just because I just kind of like it's just more of a preference thing. But every Guilty Gear game that I've played and watched like top tier matches for, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a little more complicated to learn than some other fighting games, but it is worth your time putting into it, because with some of the stuff you can do with characters, it's like, oh man, this is so awesome. It's so good. But do you have anything else for Guilty Gear you want to talk about, Twinkie, before we move on?
No, not really. So.
No mention of the soundtracks or nothing?
Oh, yeah, soundtracks is just... So, as much as I trash talk Strive, the soundtrack in that game is just as good as the other games, and I absolutely love the soundtrack. It always slaps. Like, every time I have fighting games, like, usually, sometimes when I'm playing, like, Smash Ultimate or something, I actually mute the in-game like music and I just play Guilty Gear over it instead.
Nice.
I love it that much, but nice. Yeah, it's really good.
Oh yeah.
Does that mean we potentially have some Guilty Gear Dragon Quest going on? You're playing Hero?
Oh, funny. Rocking out to Soul Bad Guys theme. That is one thing that I do like about this series as well, is that there's a lot of rock and roll music references in it. Like one of my favorite characters from Double X is Zappa, who's supposed to be based off of Frank Zappa. Mm-hmm. You have, I forget, I think if I remember right, Soul Bad Guy is somewhat based off of Freddie Mercury, mainly with how like his belt buckle says free on it. Mm-hmm. So it's like a reference to him. There's some other ones in there too, particularly with how some character themes are. But if you really like rock and roll history and like just seeing how that's sort of portrayed in this game. There's a lot of really cool references to other characters. Like, I know Johnny is supposed to be a shout out to Johnny Cash, because, Johnny dresses up in all black. Johnny Cash is the man in black. Johnny throws around coins and stuff. He's like the suave kind of guy. There's some other reference. There's not quite as many like in your face references quite like that, but it's still really cool. All the nods and shout outs to like rock and roll music, and you can tell it influenced a lot of the series. So the lore wise, it's pretty nuts, but what it's based on, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh God, I see a character that's kind of designed after Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses. Now that you're talking about that,
That's another one.
welcome to the Jacko. Wanna kick your ass?
Yeah, somehow that guy too, Pendy. Somehow he's a time traveler.
Oh,
Axel is.
Of course.
It's just like, oh, all right, time traveler. Of course.
Yeah, and like one of the characters is like a president or something like that too. He's like a ninja that became a president.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I forgot that's Chip's storyline.
Yeah, apparently he was like through like the past 3 games, like his lore was trying to become president, and then in Strive he is a president or something like that.
Our boy did it. He did
Yep.
it. God bless Chip. Chip America. That's what we call him. But yeah.
Well, I guess that means it's time now for a Bururian. Hopefully he doesn't go on about this one endlessly.
Maybe, maybe not, but maybe. So we talked about Gundam already, so I'm going to talk about it some more. Specifically, a old Super Nintendo game called Mobile Suit Gundam Wing Endless Duel. So this was a basically one-on-one fighting game that was released exclusively in Japan in 1996. It was also the first video game based on Gundam Wing, and it's pretty rockin'. It's a great fighting game. This was one that when Gundam Wing aired in America, I went out looking for, Gundam stuff, and I came across a Japanese ROM of this game since it's never got released over here. It's pretty fantastic. And after doing some research on it, it's like one of the last Super Famicom games that ever got released on the system in Japan, because it released in '96, which was, I think, the same year that Sony PlayStation came out. So it's tapping the back end of the catalog there, basically. So, like I said, it's a one-on-one fighting game with just Gundam Wing and Gundam Wing only characters. It's only got like 3 modes. It's got a story mode, a trial mode, and kind of how to describe it. It's like a endless mode. I think they just called it something else though. But and then you also had a versus where you could play 2 players with another friend. So in the single player mode, you would choose one of the characters, and from the characters on the list, you had the 5 main guys. You had Hero, Duo, Troa, Quatra, and Chang. And on more of the enemy side, you had Zex, Lucrenzia, and Lady Un, and they all piloted their mechs from the show. But like in the main story of the game, you would fight a series of battles that just depended on which Gundam you chose. But basically, you would fight all of the other Gundams, more or less. Story mode wasn't really story mode. There was no cutscenes, there was no anything. It was just fight everybody else and get to the end. And at the end, you would fight Wing Zero itself. But if you were playing as Wing Zero, you would just fight a kind of souped up version of the Wing Gundam piloted by Troa. And I think it called itself the Heavy Arms 88. And then after that, you would fight the Gundam Epion. So it kind of varied depending on who you chose. Like if you chose Zek's mobile suit, which was the tall geese, you would reach the Epion Gundam at the end, and instead of it being piloted by Zex, it would be piloted by Hero instead. And then once you completed the game a few times and beat it on hard mode, you would get a unlock to play as the final boss in multiplayer mode only, which was always nice when they do stuff like that. If there's a cheat code for it, I'm not sure. But I really like trial mode, which is endless survival, and you basically just keep fighting battles until you can no longer go on. But the counter maxes out at 99, so if you can get up to 99, you technically win. There's not really a lot to say about this game, other than it's just a really fun fighting game. It's a beautiful game too, because since it's such an end of life game, like the beginning of the opening cutscene is very, very short, to where it shows, what's her name? You couldn't remember her name earlier. She's the one that hero was just like, I'll kill you. What was her name? But anyways, it shows like a shot of her, and then it zooms by, and then you see like pictures of all the main characters, like kind of stylistically just kind of slide by the screen, and then you see Zex piloting his tall geese in a battle in space, all while Rhythm Emotion is playing in the background. So I guess some other cool stuff about this is that this game kind of released during the boom of fighting games after the launch of Street Fighter II. Like I said, it was one of the last titles to appear on the Super Famicom, and it was developed by the Tingo Project, which most people might be familiar with them from the games Wild Guns and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Fighting Edition game. In fact, the engine for this game was from the Power Rangers game, but it was souped up with exclusive improvements and stuff like that. Overall, it rated very well over here in the States for like all of the import sites that did it at the time. Everybody loved it, except that it had only a 9-character roster, to whereas, other stuff like Gundam Battle Assault had way more options. That was the one you spoke about, right, Pendy? Gundam Battle Assault?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so...
yeah, it was Relina. That was the name of the...
Relina, yeah. So, like, during a match, players are able to switch between, their weapons and melee fighting styles. So all characters have a machine gun attack, and you've got ammo that you'll see, like, under your health bars and stuff like that. Which also uses energy and targets opponents based on distance. So you'll see like little crosshairs pop up around the screen, and if the other character is within the confines of that crosshair, you can hit them with your machine gun fire. And you can gain some ammo back by simply doing damage to the other player.
Oh, that's cool.
You also have an energy counter underneath your health bar, which is used to perform like, powerful versions of special moves that you can normally do. So like every character has 1 or 2 special attacks that requires energy and plays a sound right before commencing. So you get all of these nice flashy effects right before it goes off. And the opponent can actually respond to that and cancel you out of the move by, doing a light poke or something to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, players are, also able to do dashes, air blocking, air dashes, chain combos, similar stuff like other, fighting games that use similar mechanics. It's a very simple fighting game, but it is very, very fun to watch, and it's beautiful to play. Have any of you played it by chance? I know it was a Japan-only game, but it was one of the first fighting games after Samurai Showdown that I actually played, because it came out in Japan in '96, but what was it? Gundam Wing didn't air here until years later, like 2000 or so.
Oh God,
I can't remember.
Would it be the late '90s? Maybe.
Was it the late '90s?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
But after it aired, and I kind of sought out stuff to play Gundam wise.
2000. It was 2000.
It was in 2000. Yeah, I was like 15 at the time, and I was like, man, I gotta find out more about this Gundam thing, because up until then I hadn't really been into mecha. This was like my first major mecha show.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it got a lot of people into mecha for the first time when this one aired.
So I found the ROM, and the ROM was in Japanese. A few years later, someone did an English translation of it, but for a couple of years, I was definitely playing it.
It doesn't sound like you
Japanese.
really need. Yeah, it doesn't really sound like you need much of an English patch, anyways, because, like you said, there's no story bits to it. It's just like go fight the robots and then go fight the Gundams, and then you're done.
So all of the text, all of the menu text, and everything is in English. The only thing that is in Japanese is the end of round trash talking that the character will do to the other player.
Yeah.
So, it'll be, like Troa or something will come up and be like, "You weren't a challenge at all."
Yeah,
but
I noticed that with a lot of fighting games, because I forget what that service was. It was kind of like a Netflix type service where you could rent games. It still exists today. And it had
GameFly?
Yeah, GameFly. I had GameFly for a while, and GameFly actually had an import function where you could rent imported games. And so every once in a while I would check out like a new fighting game or something like that hadn't come over here yet. And like I remember like doing a Dragon Ball fighting game, and like all the menus were in English, and then most of the other stuff was in Japanese, but they seem to do that a lot, where they'll have the menus in English for some reason. It's interesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Funny enough, this game still kind of has a presence in the competitive side. In fact, recently it was in CEO Taku. If any of you follow the whole like fighting game competitive scene.
Yep.
Like I was surprised to see it 20 years later still popping up in these things. It's just that popular.
That reminds me of like how Tecmo Super Bowl still gets tournaments to this day. That's cool.
But yeah, I don't have much more to say outside of that. Go find a ROM. It's super easy to find. It's super fun to play. I played it with a keyboard for a long time because I didn't have a gamepad or anything to do, but it's real simple to play, and it's a lot of fun. I also just love playing as Wing Zero.
He is the man and the mech.
Yangus, do you ever play this one? You should give it a try sometime.
No, I have not. I have not played this one. Sounds interesting, though.
Yeah.
I definitely check it out because, like, I am a sucker for checking out Super Nintendo games that I have not played
and
before.
It's, like I said, it looks so good and sounds so good for being a Super Nintendo game.
Yeah, really, a lot of, like, late-era Super Nintendo games, like, really push the boundaries of what the system could do.
So I believe I was looking up stuff for this the other day, and I believe that this was released on a 2 megabyte card, which for a Super Nintendo game is a very big card, so they had a lot of resource to work with.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. What was it I was just thinking about? I was Trials of Man. I've been wanting to get back to playing the original like Super Nintendo version that's on that collection of mana on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's another game that is often cited as being like one of the bigger games on the console too. Like I think they had to use a big cartridge like that as well. Like I know,
I believe it. I've seen it. I believe it.
I know, like sound processing wise, I've seen a lot of people, even those that haven't actually played the game but have listened to it, that they argue that it's one of the best sounding like Super Nintendo soundtracks with how the quality of music is on it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It
really
is.
Yeah, when playing through it and listening to it beforehand, it's like, man, this is really, there's some pretty darn good music on it that they're getting out of here, like sound quality wise. Like Super Nintendo sounds really great, like even from like the earlier games, but it really is impressive how much the hardware changed, or how much people could get out of the hardware as the years went on and things changed,
Yeah, I played a fan translation of that years ago. It's a fantastic game. If you ever get a chance to play it, in either way, using the Switch collection or do the fan translation, it's great. It's a great game.
But yeah, like I would check this fighting game out. What did you say it was called again, Bururian?
You can simply just look up Gundam Wing Endless Duel.
Okay.
You might see something. The full name of it is Shin Kido Senki Gundam Wing Endless Duel.
Yeah.
That's easy to remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it sounds interesting. I'd check it out for sure. But speaking of things we need to check out, we got to check out what Pendy's second game is. So Pendy, what do you got next for us, sir? Maybe some fighting on the streets?
Is it more Gundam?
Oh, yeah. It's
fighting
more
on the streets. Okay, so we're playing Street Gundam. All right.
Street Gundam. Gundam Street. But no, oh boy, I'm excited about this one. So my next game is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which we mentioned a little bit before. This is my favorite game in the Versus series of Street Fighter games, and probably I would say my favorite fighting game ever. So it started out in arcades in the year 2000. In the year 2000. If anyone gets that Conan reference. But eventually,
I thought it was the year. Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually was ported to consoles such as the Dreamcast, PS2, PS3, Xbox 360, and believe it or not, iOS systems, which before a few days ago I had no idea existed.
It did. I had it.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea it hit iOS.
Yeah.
It's no longer on there, though.
Oh, wow.
Rip.
But as you would expect, this game is a mixture of Capcom and Street Fighter characters. It has an amazing 56 character roster, which I will now list every single one of them. No, I'm just kidding.
In alphabetical order, I imagine.
Yes. Always.
Were you going to say alphabetical order?
No, but now I should. I will.
I'm like, that's funny if we both
were
going to do the same joke.
I loved specifically that it had such a big roster. I had one friend who was super into this game, and he was always just like, he got mad at me because I would choose both versions of Wolverine because I loved playing as Wolverine.
Oh, funny.
Wolverine and Bone Claw Wolverine.
Yeah, you got Metal Wolverine and Bone Wolverine.
Yeah, the adamantium and the bone. But it even has 3 original characters made specifically for this game. I mean, there's something for everyone in this game of how many characters it has. And unlike its predecessor, Marvel vs. Capcom, where you pick 2 playable characters and an assist-only character, in this game you pick 3 character teams from the roster. And both your characters in reserve can do specific helper attacks. They have 3 different helper attacks that you can choose from before the fight starts. You have to be careful, though. Characters can be caught for big damage during a helper attack if you aren't cautious with their timing. So it's a nice little strategy you can do in that game and catch their character that's on the screen and the helper character at the same time. Now, the control scheme is one of my favorite parts of this game. Traditionally, a lot of Street Fighter games will have 3 low, medium, and high strength attacks. In this game, there are only 4 attack buttons and 2 assist buttons. I love the simplicity of basically only having 4 attack buttons. I wish more Street Fighter games did this, but that's just a personal preference of mine. And it wouldn't be a modern Street Fighter game without the use of some kind of super move gauge. In this game, it's the hyper combo gauge, and hyper combos are also half the fun in this game because there are 3 different ways to use them. Once a single bar on the gauge is full, you can pull off a character's hyper combo. This is the more traditional method, and a lot of the characters have really fun and inventive hyper combos that they can pull off, and some even have combos that use more than 1 bar, of course. And in addition to this, if you fill up 2 or more bars of the gauge, you can do a button combo that brings in 2 or 3 of your characters at the same time to do one of their hyper combos all at once, simultaneously.
That's so Pringles.
What your curly mustache at?
Well, yeah, where you can get really tricky with this is the delayed hyper combo system. So as you're damaging an opponent with a hyper combo, you can chain in another reserve character to continue damage with their combo. You can link all 3 characters together to do this. One of my favorite teams to use was Rogue, Gambit, and Juggernaut. And what I would do to link their combos is first I would start out with Rogue's hyper combo that would whack you across the screen and then hit you up in the air for where she would do like a power draining kiss and like get one of your powers. She'd get like super powerful, more defense or more agility or whatever. But just as she's about to do that, as she's about to smack you, then I would flip in Gambit's hyper combo. He would throw his staff in the air in the beginning of that. And what a lot of people don't realize is that can actually hit somebody. And this would knock them down to the ground level, where then they would get hit by his explosive playing cards. Then as that was finishing up, I would bring in Juggernaut's punishing hyper combo where he runs you over across the screen. It was so much fun to pull off. So this game was my jam back in 2000. I played it when it first hit the local mall arcade near where I lived in Madison, Wisconsin. I was a regular there because of this game, and I went there all the time. I was pretty good at Marvel vs. Capcom, but I got really good at this one. My brother can attest to this next part because he would sometimes see this. You know, I wasn't going to win any like state or national tournaments or nothing like that, but locally, at least, I was like one of the best that was there. I sometimes literally had like a line of people looking to challenge me, putting the quarters on the arcade.
That's
cabinet.
Beautiful.
And there was only like one kid there that would come there sometimes that could beat me. That was much better than I was. But otherwise, no one else had a chance. And this wasn't just with my best team. Like I said before, like my best team was Rogue, Gambit, Juggernaut. I think Rogue was probably my best character that I was good with. But I would love to play with like other teams and other characters. I play with like Ken, Ryu, Sabretooth, Blackheart, Venom, Tronbone, Servbot, BB Hood, Guile, etc., etc. I loved playing with a lot of the different characters that this game had. And the arcade system was interesting because like not all the characters were unlocked initially. If you were with this game when it first released in 2000, it only started with 24 of the 56 possible characters. Now, the arcade machines had an experience system. The machine would tally up experience points by the amount of tokens inputted and time played. So new characters and costume changes would automatically unlock as experience was built. And so back in August of 2000, I had joined the Air Force and would ship off to basic training in September. So sadly, I missed out on some of the later characters being unlocked in my arcade unit, such as like Sentinel and some of the later characters that would get unlocked. Later down the line, I bought this game for the PlayStation 2 and then the PlayStation 3. And in these console releases, you had like a secret factor mode where you could buy extra characters and costumes from points that you would accumulate by playing the game. The PlayStation 2 didn't have online play except for in Japan, but the PlayStation 3 did, and I got to experience some of the online play when I got that version of the game, which is great. Now, on a side note, before I started researching this, as I had mentioned before, I had no idea this game actually had an iOS port. I saw a review of it on YouTube. It has a very interesting layout to work with a touchscreen. As you would expect, it has a directional wheel and like a punch and a kick input. It also has like a special swap and a special input. So swiping the swap input left to right brings in another character, but swiping it up and down would do like a friend assist or like a hyper combo. And swiping the special button in different directions would do the character's very special moves instead of trying to manipulate the directional wheel with the punch and the kick inputs. So I thought that was like really innovative how they made the control scheme for this game. Like, and if someone else had the game, you could play each other through like a Bluetooth pairing. So you could play multiplayer that way. And Yangus, you said you actually had this version of the game?
I did. Yeah, it was an interesting experience playing on there, but it was nice to have it on the go if I wanted to play it when I wasn't playing on my Xbox 360 version.
Nice. Was it a bit of a learning curve with the controls?
Yeah, it was definitely an acquired learning, but
I played it with the Dreamcast.
But you know what? It was one just I more so just goofed around with it than anything. And it was fine for what it was. It could have been better, I'm sure, and would have made a lot more sense to put it on something else. But hey, you know what? The fact they even got it working on iOS back when it was still like some of the earlier days of the arcade, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that shocked me that they actually had a version of it on iOS. I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Now, like the Versus series from Capcom, overall is one of my favorite series in gaming. This game, Marvel vs. Capcom, the first one, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and many others are a total joy for me to play. I even got the arcade 1-up cabinet that has 3 Versus games and 2 Marvel fighting games in it. I still need to build it though. It will be fun when I get it up and running. It was only $500, which also includes a custom painted stool, and that may seem like a lot, but I've seen prices for buying Marvel vs. Capcom 2 traditional arcade cabinets, and those can go up into like the thousands of dollars.
Oh, easily. So, Capcom arcade cabinets are expensive as get out.
Yeah, so it's a pretty good deal. So anyone else have, I think all of you have played this game at one point or another.
I played it on the Dreamcast the most. That was my kind of holy grail on the Dreamcast for a long time, is to get a copy of that game, because I didn't have a PlayStation 2. I didn't get a PS2 until like almost 2005, and I had an Xbox, but I don't think it released on the Xbox.
It did.
The OG Xbox?
Yeah, okay. It came out like a year after the PS2, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Xbox and 360.
But playing that game on the Dreamcast, it destroys your thumb, because the D-pad on the Dreamcast is bad. It's not great. And just the wonky design of the Dreamcast controller, man, my thumb was raw a lot playing that game.
My problem with the original cabinet was that the buttons were concave. So if you sat there and played an intense match and played several games, your fingers would actually hurt from sliding it around way too much. Yep. There's actually some players in the competitive scene during the time. There's actually some players, they actually had to have like sanitation nearby, because players would get so into the game that the concave buttons, they would start bleeding when they're in the middle of a match because of it.
Ugh.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it can be rough, but it's worth it.
That reminds me of getting like NES blisters from going too much with the A and the B buttons.
Yeah.
That's why I imported a Super Nintendo Famicom or a Super Famicom controller, because I like those reverse buttons, those convex buttons, baby.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I ended up first playing this game on the Xbox 360, Xbox Arcade, whatever it was called, that release of the game. I actually ended up going over to a buddy's house because he had, his all set up, and it's like, hey, can you help me get mine set up? It's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So went over there and downloaded the game while I was at his house, and honestly, it was well worth getting, because I've messed around with that game so much, like especially in college with friends and stuff. And I found quite a few teams that I like playing as, and I will say it, I've had people be like, oh, you're just tier picking. Like one of the first characters I learned to play as in that game was Sentinel, because I'm always because
like you.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I always like playing as the big guys in fighting games, and it's like, hey, you got this cool big ass robot, and it honestly was not because of him being a good character. Like, I didn't know he was like a top tier character.
Well, he did the character well. It was fun to play with.
Oh yeah, he's just freaking broken as all get out.
Yeah.
But I just love playing as the character, because I very much enjoy playing as the big guys. in a lot of fighting games and stuff. Just that's always been one of like my go-to characters. That's why I like Potemkin in like Guilty Gear, like in oh gosh, I'm trying to think. Like in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you know, I really enjoyed playing as like Nemesis T-type. Gosh, where's some other fighting game like big characters? Like in like the next game I'm going to talk about, I play as the big character or as one of the big characters, Big Band, like all the time, which I'll talk about in my next game. But you know, that's just always been my go-to. But like some of my favorite teams to run was Sentinel, Captain Commando, Thanos. I liked to do. What's my
Thanos
other team?
Thanos had a cool move set. I liked playing with Thanos too.
He did. Yeah, I loved doing the bubble throw. It was just it was so silly, but it worked so well. But
so Yangus, where the Knicks at?
What?
Where the Knicks at?
I'm sorry, I don't know. That reference I don't get from. I know you're quoting something from probably, but I don't recognize that.
That's one of the color schemes that Sentinel had. He was the color of the Knicks, basically. The basketball team.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I that one was like over my head. But I like doing the team of Strider, Hiryu, Juggernaut, and Charlie. I like doing that one as well.
That's cool.
And then one of my other favorite teams was I called that the robot team, even though one of them wasn't a robot. It was Mega Man, War Machine, and Sentinel. I like doing that one. Or I would, instead of Sentinel, I would do who was it? I would sometimes just throw in Servbot just because.
Oh, he's fun to play with. He's just so goofy. He's got the best super moves.
Yeah. Or one of the most
satisfying moves that I loved to pull off in that game was playing with Guile and then getting someone up in the air and doing his mid-air hyper combo. It was so satisfying if I could pull that off.
Yeah, there's some really fun like team combinations that you can do in this game for sure. And there are definitely those that, you know, like you watch a lot of the tournaments for it. Most everybody plays as like the top tier characters. But if you find some like mid-tier, mid or low tier tournaments for the game, or people just will like purposely do random where they'll have to draw like numbers and like whatever the character is assigned that number, that's the character they got to play as. It gets pretty fun watching to see what people can do, and it's because there is a nice free form style to the combo system as well. Because like one of my favorite characters to play at is a Mingo, who was one of the newly made characters for the game.
Yeah, the cactus person.
I actually found out he was originally supposed to be a Darkstalkers character, but they ended up reusing him for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 instead, because they're like, you know what, we're not really going to use him for Darkstalkers, but let's keep this design and we'll use it for this game that's coming out. But because I think that was at the time where Darkstalkers kind of had an iffy future, so they were like, we'll reuse them somewhere else.
And it was nice. They had a lot of Darkstalkers characters in this game too.
They really did.
Yeah, and Mingo was fun to play as too. And you had Jill Valentine. She was a brand new face that they added for the playable roster because Resident Evil, had just been a newer release from Capcom with Resident Evil 1 and 2, and Jill Valentine has a really fun moveset as well. She was always fun to mess around with.
Yeah, because she could like summon zombies and zombie dogs and all sorts of stuff. It was great. She had good, really fun moveset. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever play as Hayato? I loved playing as him.
Oh, yeah.
I love Star Gladiator. I used to love playing Star Gladiator, and I was happy to see him in.
Yeah, I like to do Hayato. I think my one team I would do was Hayato, Jin from that Mecha Fighter.
Oh, yep. He was always my choice whenever I would select Hayato, and then I would always have like Omega Red, because I love Omega Red. He's one of my favorite Marvel villains.
I think if I remember right, I did like a Hayato, Jin, and it was either Guile was the third character or the other character was Doctor Doom or Tron.
Doctor Doom.
Doctor Doom was another character I'd always loved throwing on teams. And again, it's mainly because I just love Doctor Doom. It's like when I played Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Like, Doom was considered a top-tier character in both Marvel 3 and Ultimate Marvel 3. I like playing as Doom because I love Doom. I love how over-the-top he is.
Yeah,
he's so much fun as a character.
And, like, Trombone is great, too. I loved how she could, like, capture somebody and stun them so that you could then go in with a bunch of moves after that. I liked her stun moves.
Yeah, it's very, like, this is very much a game where you're going to find, like, a number of characters you're going to love playing as. Because there's some fun move sets out there for and team combinations that you can do. That's why this game is, like, to this day still played, so heavily.
Yeah, and it's funny because like all these Marvel and Versus games that became popular, that's how I learned about a lot of characters that I'd never known about before. Like, I wasn't a big comic person, so I didn't know who Thanos was. I didn't know much about the Hulk, except for he's this big green angry guy. So a lot of what I learned about like Marvel characters early on was from these versus games. So it's like when Thanos became a thing for the movies, I was like, oh hey, it's the guy from Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Say that in a comic book shop.
Right?
Oh yeah, no, I had the same thing. Because I'm just like, oh, it's a really cool, like, big ass alien guy, and then it's just like, oh no, he's actually from comics and stuff. I actually remember
okay.
Pendy when I went and saw Avengers, or the original Avengers movie in like 2012 with a friend of mine. He knew about the after credits scene, but he didn't tell me what it was about. So when we were watching it in the movie theater, it gets to Thanos. I remember just being like, oh, that's Thanos. He's in Marvel vs. Capcom too.
Same.
It's like, that's awesome.
And it was like when, I know the moves of Hulk didn't originate in the game, but like when the second Hulk movie came out that had what's his name as his star, who is from American History X, that guy. But when they did a lot of the moves that I knew from the Versus games, like, oh, they're doing the moves from the video game. This is awesome. And they actually said Hulk smash. Yeah. Yeah, I've loved this game. I've played it so much, and the arcade, the home version, everything. It's just a joy to play and mess around with all the different character teams, because that's something that I like to do in video games. Like, some people, like, they'll main a few characters and they'll do mostly that, but like I'll main some characters for certain games, but I love to play with almost all the characters that I can, unless I like really hate them for some reason and suck at them. I like to have a variety of playing with all the different characters and experimenting and goofing around, and if I'm playing my buddies, like, I love just doing random, like hitting random and seeing who you get, and then just playing with whoever. I like doing it.
It was always fun to pull out BB Hood, and people would be like, what?
She was a good character. She had a good super too.
She did.
Shot you up to hell and back.
Yeah, especially if you had a taller character you were fighting, because then it would do even more damage, because they're getting hit by like 3 waves of bullets.
I do remember being annoyed by Cable, because people would play keep away with him pretty well.
Oh yeah,
they knew what they were doing. That big laser beam attacks.
We call that zoning.
Yeah.
Yep.
That zoning would get annoying sometimes.
Yep.
Cable's the reason why I hate zoning in every fighter.
I do not blame you. Do not blame you. That's his specialty for sure.
That's why Twinkie always tells me he hates it when I play as one of the Lynx in Smash. That's like,
I hate zoners with a passion, man. I just don't like them.
I know, I've always laughed about that too, because it's like, I don't think I zone that much, but all right.
You don't even have to zone that much. I just get irritated by it, even if you just do it a couple times. I don't like that.
Throws out an arrow. Oh! But no.
Oh, you know what? One of the nice features of the home console ports of this is that you could unlock a mode where you could actually pick multiple copies of the same character. So, like, my best character was Rogue, so I could pick like 3 Rogues and play with that team. that was fun.
So you're telling me I could have been getting 3 Wolverines?
You could have, yes. If you unlocked that mode, you could.
Oh no.
Just imagine a like top level super of 3 Wolverines doing 3 Berserker barrages.
Amazing. That'd be great. Well, anyone else got any fond memories of this game they want to go with?
Well, I guess when I started playing it on the Dreamcast, that was kind of the time that I started getting into playing fighting games more with friends than just kind of doing it solo all the time, because I remember getting the first Marvel vs. Capcom game on the PlayStation 1. And I must have put over 100 hours into that game solo. I would play that game like every day and go through arcade mode with several characters like every night.
Too. Yeah.
It was all the PS1 version was also very interesting too, because you would always choose a second character, but you could never like switch to them in battle like you could in the arcade. Like, you would have to put a button command in between matches to switch to the other character.
Oh, okay.
It was the weirdest thing, but no, with Marvel vs. Capcom 2, a friend had it on the Dreamcast, and that's what really made me want to get it on the Dreamcast. And we would go over to his house several times a week after school. Like, this was before I had a car, so we would just hop on the bus that he rode home and just go over to his house and play the game until, it started getting dark out and parents would come pick us up. But I have a lot of super fond memories about this game because of that, because we just, it was a weekly thing for months where we would just play 2 to 3 nights a week. And I must have put in hundreds and hundreds of hours into this game, and that's where my friends got upset with me choosing Wolverine all the time, because I got way too good with Wolverine.
Oh, I will say before I forget that the only thing I don't like about this game, and I'm sure Yangus knows where I'm going with this, is the soundtrack. I can't. Soundtrack is god awful.
I was gonna ask about the music. Just because
it is just so bad and repetitive, and it's like, what is going on here? Like, it was so much better.
No, it's amazing. What are you talking about?
Gonna take you for a ride. Gonna take you for a ride.
This game soundtrack is god tier.
Over and over. Oh, but besides
Girl,
that,
you crazy.
Yeah, and your average fighting game YouTuber always has that music playing in their videos too. Ugh. It gets old real quick.
Oh man,
I agree with you on that.
No.
It's like this smooth jazz soundtrack to it. Like it's just annoying. No. It's the one thing I didn't like about it. Otherwise, perfect game.
Girl, you crazy.
Yangus.
The soundtrack's amazing. What are you talking about?
Yangus, what you got going on over there?
What are you talking about?
With your fighting game.
What? I have another one I got to talk about,
He's
too.
got some girls to talk about. That's what I heard.
Got a dish. but yeah. So, for my second game I wanted to talk about, it's the fighting game that will never die. It is Skullgirls. Originally released in 2012, Skullgirls is an indie fighting game featuring fully hand-drawn animation for every character. It has been released on nearly every console since first appearing on the PS3, Xbox 360, and I believe a PC release at the time, and has appeared on pretty much every console since then. So like PS4, the Xbox One, I believe. It's been on the Switch. Of course, it's been updated on different PCs. I believe it can also be played on Linux as well. Last I checked, it was anyway. But it's appeared on many consoles since then.
Well, you know what they say. You're probably going to bring it up anyway, so I'll let you keep going.
Okay. But yeah, so it's been released on multiple consoles. It's received constant updates, DLC, and a lot more over the past decade. As the joke goes with the Skullgirls fan base, it's been over 3,000 days, and the Skullgirl launch party will never end.
That's it? That was it?
Yeah. Okay. All right. We delivered. All right. So, starring an all-female cast on its initial release, Skullgirls focuses on a previously war-torn world in the fictional city of New Meridian and the Canopy Kingdom. The population includes humans, fish people known as Dogen, ferals or animal people, parasites, which can take on various forms, and they choose a host to either help or control them, just depending on their personality. Many mysterious entities, including a shape-shifting abomination and a woman made entirely out of blood because of how old she is. You have people given mechanical makeovers to help them live a normal life as best they can, due to said war that I mentioned a little bit ago, and even joke characters poking fun at robots, clones, and everything else goofy fighting games love to do. The backstory goes that every 7 years a mysterious object called the Skull Heart appears and will grant the wish of the woman who finds it. Said woman becomes a Skullgirl, hence the game's title, and as the story goes, you learn about some of the other Skullgirls that have caused issues within this world of the game. If the woman's wish is not pure, a woman will become a Skullgirl if her wish is not pure. But as we learn in the story modes, there's no way to avoid the ultimate fate of those who use the heart. This has caused tragedy after tragedy, but the mistakes of wishing on the heart never seem to end. And again, this is touched upon in one of the story modes in the game, in a really good way too, actually. But moving away from the story, we got to talk about some playable characters, because this is one of the fighting game. This is a fighting game that actually features a predominantly female roster of characters. So at initial release, the game included 8 playable characters. There was Philia and her parasite Samson. Philia is a young woman who ended up losing her memory, and as you go through, she starts to learn a little bit more about herself and her bond with Samson. There's Cerebella, the circus performer, who works for the Medici family, which is this mafia gang within the city of New Meridian. There's Peacock and her cartoon-inspired gang of goons, who work for Lab 8, which is one of the labs that researches on how to defeat the Skullgirl. And Peacock herself was originally a young woman named Patricia, who ended up being altered and attacked because of the war going on, and just unfortunately, with what happened to her body, Lab 8 had to operate on her to help save her life. There's Miss Fortune, a cat pun-loving woman who has gained immortality thanks to a mysterious item known as the Life Gem.
Yeah.
That would just be like one of the things she'd say. Like, she will say stuff like, "Meow, it's personal," or "What a catastrophe." Like, she is just like, if she was in a Dragon Quest game, she'd fit right in. But another character, there's Parasol and her black egret soldiers. Parasol is actually one of the princesses of the Canopy Kingdom and is trying to help keep order within the city and within her kingdom as a whole. There's Painwheel, a young girl who was an unfortunate target for Lab 0, one of the anti-Skullgirl labs that instead of asking her if she'd be willing to undergo these changes in order to help save her life, she was just kidnapped and transformed into this monstrosity known as Painwheel. There's Valentine, a very a play on the old "Hello Nurse" kind of joke, like if you've ever seen Animaniacs, where it's the sexy nurse that has a very dark side to her and loves to use ninja skills. But we also learn that she's got a bit more going for her story-wise. And finally, Double, a mysterious entity that can shape-shift into anyone or anything that it wants to, and it seems to be serving the Skullgirl and the Skull Heart. After launch, some new characters that added in the game that were included in the game up until 2015 include Squiggly and her parasite Leviathan. Squiggly real name is Sienna, who used to be part of the rival family to the Medici, so unfortunately she lost her life because of a Medici attack on Squiggly's family. There's Big Band. His real name is Benjamin Birdland, who is the first male playable character in the game and is a member of Lab 8, much like Peacock is. His shtick is that a lot of his attacks and animations are all based on musical instruments, and in some cases he actually uses musical instruments to attack, which is pretty hilarious. There is Eliza and her two goons, Horus and Albus, the three of them all being based off of Egyptian motifs. Eliza also having her own parasite called, I'm probably going to say it right, it's a Sekhmet. It's based off of like the goddess of blood or a bloody harvest or something like that from Egyptian lore. There is Beowulf, who is much like the fabled story of Beowulf, took down Grendel and his mother, but this time in a wrestling match, and not as like a barbarian warrior type. There is there was Fukua, an April Fool's Day gag that became a fully fledged playable character, and Robo Fortune, another gag character that was a last-minute stretch goal for the Indiegogo campaign. And as of the early 2020s, the game has been receiving some new playable characters again, this time bringing in two highly requested characters, Annie of the Stars and her parasite Sagan, and Umbrella, Parasol's little sister, with her living weapon, Hunger. The next character announced as of now will be Black Dahlia, which I believe she's scheduled to come out before the end of this year. And the last character of this DLC will be announced at EVO 2022 this year, and possibly some more characters. The new owners of the IP have been hinting at that. So hey, you know what? If they can keep this game going for its plus 3,000 day launch party, hey, I'm all for it, man.
It never ends.
It never ends. But yeah, so even though this game does have a bit of a smaller roster than some other fighting games out there now, all of them are very well crafted. A lot of hand-drawn animation. All of them have a lot of combo potential. Some are a little easier to learn than others, but it's sort of like with Marvel vs. Capcom, where you're going to find someone who really would click with you. And since we were talking about Street Fighter / Marvel vs. Capcom a little bit ago, let's go over the control scheme. So this game uses a Street Fighter style control system with 3 punches and 3 kicks. The combo system uses a very free-form approach, meaning that players of all skill levels can learn how to combo moves together. You can summon assist characters to help extend a combo, or you can have them swap in via a raw tag or a crossover super move. As the years have gone on, updates have been done to help make this a little easier for people to understand, like one of the best times for it, as well as helping players learn how to escape from combos and teaching them, the best ways to try and extend your combos instead of just, constantly repeating the same moves, which can end up allowing your opponent to break out of your combos much easier. It's a little hard to explain just by talking about it, but basically it's like if you did a combo where you did like light, medium, heavy, launch them in the air, you do an attack, you launch them back down. If you went back to the same light button you used to start that combo, it's going to go like red icon pops up. Your opponent can break out of the combo. So basically it has helped teach you over the years. And if you've, played it for a long time, like here's some ways you can mix up your combo game and prevent that from happening to you, as well as just to teach you how the combo system can work. Anyway, Skullgirls allows players to have a team of 1, 2, or 3 characters. The less characters you have, the stronger your team will be. So, if you have a single character, they're going to be super strong. Whereas with the 3-man team, they're going to be at their weakest, but you have that option then for like the assists and whatnot. And with 2 or more characters, players are able to choose just about any move from a character's moveset to act as an assist attack. That includes their normal attacks or their special moves. So if you say use Peacock as one of your assists, she can use one of her projectile attacks, whether it's just her heavy punch attack, which will fire a single cannon shot, or if you want to have her use one of her George throws, where she like throws out George in a little go-kart, so he like zips across the stage, so he can like keep the ground controlled. You have those options, whatever you want to do. And luckily with the game's freeform combo system too, there's a ton of possibilities for you. So if you find one that works for you, then hey, great, use that one to your heart's content. So yeah, it's a little complicated, kind of like with the Guilty Gear learning thing at first, but thankfully with how the combo system works, it is pretty easy to learn and figure out how to play it. So it's definitely one that the more you play it you're going to quickly realize, oh, I can go, from this to this, or I can do this and that. And it has a pretty good learning system as well. Anyway, for this game, it has tons of game modes for it, including including a story mode for all playable characters. You have arcade, survival, online play with lobbies, some challenges that you can complete, a very extensive art gallery that you can unlock a ton of pictures from, including guest pieces, artwork made by the designers of the game's characters and whatnot. Tons of stuff you can watch and enjoy. And there's also an extensive training mode and a tutorial to help teach newcomers and first-time players how to play Skullgirls or fighting games in general. It's kind of like what we were talking about with the Guilty Gear one a little while ago. It's a very well done tutorial / learning area for players, and it's one that I definitely recommend you check out if you do decide to play this game or you're more kind of interested in fighters. And before I forget, I'm going to go a little bit over the crazy backstory that was going on with this game over the years, because it's had quite its ups and downs over the past decade. Just to kind of summarize things, without getting too much into detail or going too overboard. It went through development hell with its publishers to consoles. Konami originally helped publish this game, and we all know what Konami is like, I'm sure. So, that was fun for Autumn Games and Lab Zero at the time to help deal with that and get the patches out and everything. But eventually Autumn Games, who are the creators / owners of the IP, they started an Indiegogo campaign to help out the game. Said campaign received over $500,000. It's crazy how much money this game ended up making from that campaign of it. And many of those, and from that campaign, we saw many new additions and characters thanks to it. There actually were a few voting rounds as well for characters, because originally what it was supposed to be was that once this all went through, like there was going to be Squiggly as the first character, and then the second character was going to be Parasol's sister Umbrella. Well, Big Band ended up winning a popularity contest during the time, so it's like, hey, we'll put him in instead. And thus started the long-running joke of Umbrella is super salty in every picture she shows up in, because it's this little like 10-year-old girl who always has this disgruntled look on her face because she keeps getting passed over every single time a new character was up for voting when she was originally supposed to be in the game in the first place. There also were the other additions, like some different voice packs for characters there. And actually, that's how Robo Fortune came about too, because originally it was supposed to just be a joke voice pack for Miss Fortune. But then they were like, you know what? Let's throw in Robo Fortune as her own character as a last-minute stretch goal to be like sort of this beam-focused character instead, with all these robot moves and robot puns and memes and all that stuff. So it was sort of just like a last-minute surprise, kind of like how same thing happened with Fuqua too, where she was just kind of like a surprise, like, hey, it's an April Fool's joke, but now she's really playable. So after that Indiegogo campaign, things went on pretty calmly for the most part. After 2015, Unfortunately, there was some drama behind the scenes with Lab Zero. When one of the devs at Lab Zero, there was some behind the scenes drama. He had to end up leaving the company. Lab Zero ended up dissolving. The new team that formed from previous members has rejoined with the game to help it out. But the series eventually did get back on its feet thanks to the new co-owners, Hidden Variable. They have helped support the series with the Skullgirls mobile game release, which is kind of like a touchscreen fighter / adds a little more story to the game if you're interested in the world of Skullgirls, I should say, to add story to that. And from the success of that mobile release, it helped lead to some more content being added to the proper Skullgirls game on the home consoles and PC and everything, including the finally getting characters like Annie and Umbrella, who had been teased for years and years, and were such fan favorite characters. And over the years too, as this game has gotten updated, usually the developers give it like an encore title. Like when it first got its big major update, it was called Encore. Now it's on second Encore, and I'm curious if at some point they're going to go with a third Encore, if there's like a PS5 version or like a new brand, like a brand spanking new updated version of the game. Now, getting off of my notes, I'll just say that I have followed this game since it originally came out. The fact it was a hand-drawn fighting game really interested me. This is back when I was really into fighting games as well, back in like my later high school days. So this game really caught my eye. I didn't have the means to play it, unfortunately, and even though I had an Xbox 360, I just didn't mess with it as much, so I didn't warrant buying it. But I did eventually get the PC release on Steam in college. Loved the hell out of it. Played that all the time. And I picked up the PS4 version. I want to get the Switch version at some point. And just recently I bought the DLC, which actually, reinvigorated my love for this game because, all jokes aside, with that launch party of 3,000 plus days, like Skullgirls is a game that has always stuck with me too because it is a lot of fun. It's really well made. The combo system, it is kind of weird at first to learn, but it's once you get a hang of it, it's a lot of fun to mess around with. And this is a fighting game that I love coming back to as well and trying out different character combinations, or like just seeing what all sort of references they threw in for like the character color schemes. Like Beowulf is really funny because his color schemes include shout outs to Wolverine's classic yellow spandex look. You have Batman's look. You have some characters, I think Annie, she has a Wonder Woman styled outfit, some references to like Nintendo games, and you can just tell that the dev team have had fun over the years with this game. And that is also why there is the joke of this game will never die, and that it's always in its launch party, because so much new content keeps coming to this game, even though it always seemed like for the longest time was just like the fighting game that just either kept getting swept under the rug or just didn't have a huge amount of spotlight on it. But it's just stayed strong, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. I've been talking a lot about this one, though, so what do you guys think about this one?
Is there a Waluigi costume for any of the characters?
There is, actually.
Oh, well, then this is much
it's a Wario Waluigi color scheme. It's a Wario.
I've already decided this is better than Smash, then, if that's the case.
yeah, Big Band, if you have the Season 1 DLC pass, he gets a Wario and Waluigi inspired color scheme for him.
And I guess that's only available on the Switch?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I just found out, I opened up Steam while we were talking about this to look at the game, and apparently I purchased this game in November of 2013 and have put a whole 50 minutes into it. So, hey, if you ever want to play on Steam, I've got it.
I got it on Steam too, so.
Oh yeah, it's a ton of fun to play with friends and stuff. I played this all the time with one of my buddies in college. He actually was going to school in Illinois while I was going to school here in Iowa, and it was great because playing online, the online was very good even back then in like 2013, 2014. It was a lot of fun playing matches with him. He hated that I played Big Band a lot, but but I love, like, Big Band is like the best playable character in a fighting game, and I refuse to believe otherwise.
Well, I am a Big Band loyalist, so I 100% agree with that.
They have a new character coming that's recently announced, apparently.
Yep.
Black Dahlia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That'll be fun too, because that'll be another villainous character for the roster. That'll be.
She got a big gun arm. I'm for it.
Oh yeah. Watching her alpha trailer for how her gameplay is going to be. Oh, it's going to be great. I can't wait. I only hope that the last character they add for the fourth character, anyway, is Panzerfaust, who's just this giant hulking monstrosity of an Egrets member of the Preparsol's group of soldiers. I would love it because he's got a literal tank for an arm. I want this giant man as a playable character. Please make it happen. That's all I ask. I just want Tank Man as my playable character.
You heard it here, developers. Let's go.
Let's make it Panzerfaust, baby. But yeah, Skullgirls is a lot of fun, and it's one that's pretty easy to, it is a little weird at first trying to learn to play the game, but honestly, once you get the hang of it, it's real fun to just pick up and play and just mess around with, whether it's by yourself or with friends. Love. And it's crazy to me too that this game, because I've realized when I bought the season 1 pass just a few weeks ago, it's like, oh my god, this game's been out for a decade.
Yeah.
And it's still going strong. It's crazy. I had just watched the Combo Breaker tournament for it too that just happened a few weeks ago. Oh my god. It like the hype that was surrounding this game for, being 10 years old. It's like with Tekken 7 where like there's still so much hype for that game, even though it's from 2013. It's still there and in full force from people. Like, people love watching it and playing it.
It's nice that an independent fighting game has been so successful. That's good to see.
Oh yeah.
Like or like another great independent fighting game would be like Dive Kick, if you ever played that.
Oh my god, Dive Kick. I love Dive Kick.
Dive Kick.
So goofy.
But yeah, this is definitely one worth checking out. Whatever system you have, you can pretty much find it on just about any of them. And I know the Switch version, though, unfortunately, just because it was not published by Hidden Variable / Autumn Games on the Switch. It does not have access to the DLC or some of the newer updates. It does have everything up from the second Encore version, so like you'll have everything that was in the game added since 2015. But unfortunately, just because of its publisher at the moment, they just don't have access to some of the the newer DLC, like Annie and Umbrella. So if you pick up this game, I would recommend maybe either holding out to see when that's going to come out for that version. They haven't said when it's going to. I'm guessing it's going to be once all this DLC has been released. They're going to put it all out at once for the Switch version. Otherwise, it plays very well on PS4. You can get it on Steam. I don't know about Xbox systems off the top of my head, but whether you go with Steam or with PS4, I mean, you can't go wrong. It's a lot of fun, especially if you can get it at a nice price. You will not be disappointed, especially if you enjoyed playing arcade or playing fighting games in the arcades.
Very nice.
But yes, that is my shtick, and I think that wraps us up then, unless anybody else has another fighting game they want to quickly mention real quick.
No, I threw in my Dive Kick reference on
It's all leading up to that. That was all Pendy's plan. Well, I think then with that case, we've reached the end of our arcade mode run. We've gotten the high score, and it's game over.
One
and
credit
that's
clear,
gonna
baby.
do it. Yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of Sidequest. We want to definitely thank Bururian and Twinkie for joining us tonight to talk about their fighting games. So thank you guys.
Yeah, glad I could be here.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank you, Pendy, too, for joining me for not only the co-host seat for this episode, but that we were finally able to do this fighting game episode. This has been a long time coming.
It has been. I've been waiting for this one for so long since you talked about it. I don't know how long ago, but I remember when that was one of the first things that you mentioned. It's like, oh, we can do a fighting game one. I was like, oh, I'm okay. I want to do this. I want to do a fighting game. I'm gonna wait. I wasn't impatient. I didn't nag you about it. I was like, I'm just gonna wait until he's good and ready. But I was very excited to finally do a fighting game. Sidequest. It's great.
Oh, yeah. I think this has been an episode idea, too, that's been kicking around since the start of Sidequest, actually. Because I think, actually, that was one of the things we were talking about before we recorded the very first episode of with the Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy 1 through 6, where it was like, oh, it'd be fun to talk about that. Or like when I was writing up my list of stuff on the Google Docs and everything. But yeah, and this is definitely a topic too. Like, I'll just say it now. We'll probably revisit at some point in the future. Now, whether Platty is with us or not, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, because like in the future, like we could do, I know I'll probably do like Street Fighter 4. I'm sure we can get some people that can talk about Smash, including you. So all sorts of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Because I'd love to. There's actually been some fighting games that I've discovered in the last few weeks from Sunsoft, actually, which is an older developer from like the 90s. They had some arcade games. I think I sent you the trailer for that one, Pendy. It was a fan-made like crossover game between their two old fighting games like Galaxy Warriors and Waku Waku 7. Which are both like complete opposite spectrums on what they're supposed to be stylistic wise. But
okay, interesting.
But I think those are the correct names for them. I could be wrong on the Galaxy one. Anyway, they were like these older arcade fighting games that had such a unique look and style to them. It was like, oh, these look really cool actually. So if whenever I do get a chance to play them myself, I'd love to talk about them in the future. And when we were talking like behind the scenes too with this fighting game idea for an episode, there were a lot of other games that came up too. Could be like, oh, that'd be good to talk about. Oh, let's go with that. No, let's save that for another episode. Okay, so, we had a lot of conversation about it, so I definitely think this is a topic that we could easily revisit in the future for sure.
And maybe I'll have my 1-up arcade unit finally built at that point in time. I'll finally get around to it.
We'll need picture proof.
Oh no, I will. Yeah. I will. I'll post it in the Discord when it happens.
Yeah, we'll make sure to include that in the YouTube version that our good friend Woodis puts up.
Yes.
But there's one thing that we don't put up with, and that's Patreon. Isn't that right, Pendy?
That's right. We don't use Patreon. We won't take you for a ride. If you do have any money in your wallet that is spinning bird kicking your car, wooden barrels, flaming oil drums, bricks, or concrete slabs, and you would like to donate anything to a website that's been supporting Dragon Quest fans for over 20 years, stop by the Dragon's Den at www.woodis.com/den and click on Support This Site. Woodis has owned and maintained the Dragon's Den fan site for decades. He personally edits every YouTube version of our podcast, and he fully appreciates any donations to help keep the servers running.
If you have any suggestions for a future Sidequest episode, we'd be happy to hear from you. You can reach out to our usual places. You can reach out to Platty via PlattyM3 on Twitter or on Discord or on the Dragon's Den. You can also contact me on the Dragon's Den via personal message or on the Dragon's Den Discord. You just have to look for Yangus the Legendary Bandit or Yangus and you'll be able to find me. Just look for the pointed hat. We have a list full of ideas and we'd be happy to add some more. And as we said a little bit ago, always open to revisit ideas because, again, with fighting games, tons of them we didn't talk about. This is easily a topic we could revisit in the future.
Definitely. Well, bye, everyone.
Side quest complete. Game over.